When your heart stops beating, the world doesn't go silent. It changes frequency. What you call death is not the end, but the beginning of the most extraordinary journey your soul will ever take. According to Edgar Cayce, the moment the body exhales its final breath, consciousness doesn't disappear, it expands. The soul rises, aware yet detached, watching its earthly life from above, not in horror or fear, but in awe, as if waking from a long dream. For 12 sacred hours, your soul transitions between dimensions, reviewing the meaning of its existence, guided by unseen forces that have been with you since birth. These first moments are crucial because what you feel, think, and realize right after death defines what comes next. Cayce revealed that this passage is not judgment, but recognition, the instant your spirit remembers who you truly are. Stay until the end, because what you'll discover about these 12 hours may forever change how you live your life today. Before we begin, share in the comments what you believe happens in the very first moments after death. Your answer might reveal more than you think. The moment the body takes its last breath, a great silence falls, not around you, but within you. Edgar Cayce described this instant as the awakening of the real self, the part of you that has been alive since before you were born. Your heart stops, your body cools, but the awareness that once looked through your eyes now sees from beyond them. There is no fear in this first moment, only a deep recognition that something greater has begun. You realize you are still conscious, but detached from the weight of flesh. You can see the people around you, hear their cries, feel their emotions, yet you stand in complete peace. Time dissolves, the pain disappears. You start to sense a light, not outside, but inside, pulling you upward. Cayce said this light is the same divine presence that sustains all life, and when the soul meets it, it remembers God. These first minutes are filled with clarity and love, a reminder that death was never punishment, but return. As the minutes turn to hours, your perception expands like ripples in water. You begin to understand that you are not your name, your face, or even your memories. You are awareness itself. Cayce explained that the soul immediately reviews the emotional tone of its life, not as judgment but as truth revealed. Every act of kindness vibrates with light. Every act of harm feels heavy and distant. You are drawn toward the vibration you created. In this moment, your thoughts are no longer private. They are energy shaping what you see. The physical world fades, and the spiritual world comes into focus. The room, the bed, the mourners, all dissolve into something larger, more real. You are not falling asleep, you are waking up to eternity. The soul then begins to move, and not walking, not flying, but shifting through consciousness itself. Cayce said that the newly departed often feel a sense of being carried, surrounded by familiar presences. Some recognize loved ones who passed before them. Others sense angelic beings guiding them gently away from the physical realm. There is no confusion, only adjustment. Imagine standing at the edge of an ocean you once feared and realizing it welcomes you. In this sacred passage, your awareness becomes light enough to move freely. Every emotion, every memory, every lesson of your life begins to unfold before you like pages of a living book. You see the truth, not as punishment, but as understanding. Around the third or fourth hour, according to Cayce, the soul fully separates from the physical form. The silver cord, the energetic link between body and spirit, gently releases. It is not a violent tearing, but a divine release, like a child being lifted from its mother's arms. You watch your body now, knowing it was only a garment you once wore. There is compassion for it, gratitude even, but no desire to return. The body belongs to the earth, but you belong to eternity. This realization fills you with peace. For the first time, you understand what it means to be truly free. As this freedom settles in, your awareness expands beyond anything the human mind could comprehend. There is no ceiling, no walls, no horizon. You begin to sense colors and sounds that never existed on Earth, not seen with eyes or heard with ears, but felt through vibration. Cayce described this state as the mind entering the etheric plane, where thought itself is substance. Here, what you think becomes what you see. If your heart is filled with love, you're surrounded by brilliance. If it carries fear or regret, you find yourself in a dim reflection of your own energy. The soul realizes that heaven and hell are not locations, but conditions of consciousness. You don't face judgment from a throne. You face the echo of your own spirit. Every action, every word, every hidden thought stands before you, not to condemn, but to teach. And in that light you understand mercy for the first time. Time no longer moves as it did before. The soul experiences what Cayce called the Great Review. You relive moments you had forgotten. The tears of someone you hurt, the smile of someone you helped, the small choices that shaped entire paths. Yet you feel them all with compassion, not shame. You see how every difficulty was an opportunity for growth, how every failure was a step toward awakening. The soul recognizes the perfect order hidden in chaos. What once felt unfair now makes sense. You begin to understand that life on earth was not random. It was a classroom designed by divine intelligence, and the teacher was always within you, whispering through intuition, conscience, and love. Then comes a stillness. The soul pauses, as if waiting for something. In that silence you sense a familiar presence, a light so vast and gentle, it feels like being embraced by eternity itself. Cayce said, "This is the Christ light, the consciousness of pure love that connects every soul to God." You don't see a person, but a presence that feels like home. Some souls fall to their knees in awe, others simply weep in peace. It's here that many realize Jesus was never a distant figure, but the living spirit within all creation. In this moment, everything that separated you from God dissolves. The illusion of isolation ends. You understand that you were never alone, not even in your darkest hour. At this stage, the soul decides, not through words but through resonance, whether it's ready to move higher or needs to rest. Some remain close to the earthly plane for a time, comforted by prayer, drawn by unfinished love or attachment. Others ascend quickly, carried by faith and surrender. Cayce explained that this decision is not made by authority, but by vibration. You go where your soul fits. No one forces you upward or holds you down. It is the ultimate law of harmony, like sound seeking its perfect pitch. And in realizing this, you begin to sense that your choices on earth were never trivial. They were frequencies that built your eternity. Before we continue deeper into this sacred transition, take a moment to reflect. What kind of energy are you creating right now in your own life? If this message moves you, take a second to like this video and subscribe so more people can awaken to these truths and reconnect with the divine purpose within them. As the next hours unfold, the soul becomes more accustomed to its new state. It begins to understand that thought is movement and love is power. Cayce said that in this phase, the soul starts communicating without words. Every emotion is a language, every intention a message. You no longer speak, you emanate. Beings of light approach, not as strangers, but as guides who have always walked beside you unseen. They radiate calmness, wisdom, and recognition. They do not ask who you are because they already know. They remind you that this transition is not punishment, but evolution. You are not being tested, you are being revealed. What you once feared as death is simply your spirit remembering the truth of its own divinity. You look upon your earthly life again, not as a timeline, but as a pattern. Every joy, every loss, every act of courage forming a thread in the design of your soul. Cayce explained that this understanding comes as waves of revelation. You see how your relationships were lessons, how pain carved space for compassion, how even silence taught faith. You begin to feel gratitude for everything, even what once broke you. This gratitude lifts your vibration, and with it, the scenery changes. The dim shadows fade, the light grows warmer, denser, more alive. You feel the presence of souls who rejoice in your awakening. They do not speak, but you feel their joy. There is no separation here, only unity. Cayce often said that the soul in these early hours is gently guided through realms that mirror its inner state. For those who cultivated love, forgiveness, and service, the passage is luminous. For those who lived in resentment or greed, the transition feels slower, heavier, yet still filled with hope. No soul is lost. All are loved. You begin to see how divine law is never cruel. It's perfectly just. The universe does not punish, it mirrors. It reflects exactly what you've built within. That realization brings both humility and peace. You start to sense the enormous responsibility of consciousness, that heaven is not something given, but something created through every thought and deed. Then, around the 9th or 10th hour, you become aware of an invisible current, a pull upward, subtle but undeniable. Cayce described it as the call of the higher self, the eternal part of you that never truly left the presence of God. It calls you home. You feel it deep within, not as a voice, but as a knowing. It reminds you of all you forgot while living in the physical world, that love is the only truth and everything else was learning. You move toward that frequency effortlessly, drawn like a spark returning to its flame. As you rise, the remnants of earthly worry dissolve. Fear disappears completely. You no longer question what is real, because you are reality itself. In this ascent, time dissolves completely. You no longer measure existence in hours, but in awareness. Cayce said that as the soul rises from the lower vibrations of the earth plane, it begins to enter what he called the borderland of spirit, a region of reflection and preparation. Here you see the consequences of your choices not as punishment, but as energy still in motion. If there is unfinished love, it calls gently for completion. If there is forgiveness left unspoken, it echoes softly through the soul's memory, yet there is no torment, because understanding replaces regret. You realize that every person you ever hurt or loved remains connected to you through invisible bonds of thought. You begin to send light to them instinctively, blessing them in silence. This act alone frees you more than anything else could. As the 12th hour approaches, something profound occurs. The awareness of divine order becomes undeniable. The soul begins to sense an intelligence behind every breath of existence. Cayce called it the mind of the Creator, the source that sustains all planes of life. You realize you were never a separate being traveling through time. You were always a part of this infinite consciousness, exploring itself through you. That recognition overwhelms you with awe. You no longer see God as distant, but as the very essence of your being. You understand why Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." The soul does not find heaven, it remembers it. At this point, many souls encounter what Cayce described as the great light of orientation. It's not a place, but a state, a radiant expanse of energy so pure it humbles even the highest consciousness. You do not enter it as a visitor, you merge with it. Everything you were dissolves into everything that is. The sense of I expands until it includes all creation. There is no loneliness here, no questions, no fear. You become one with love itself. In that light, every prayer ever spoken, every tear ever shed, every act of kindness ever given becomes visible as threads in a vast divine tapestry. You finally see the meaning of suffering, that it was never punishment, but the friction that carved wisdom into the soul. And yet, even in this perfection, there is a purpose. Cayce explained that the soul, after this revelation, prepares to continue its journey, to rest, to learn, or to return to the physical world when ready. The choice depends on growth. Some souls move into higher realms of light where they study the laws of creation. Others feel called back to earth to heal what remains unfinished. Reincarnation, Cayce said, is not a trap but a privilege, a chance to refine the divine image within. You realize now that life and death are two halves of one eternal process, and nothing is ever truly lost. Every moment, every lesson, every love carries forward. Death was never an end. It was simply a door. If this message touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection may awaken someone who's searching for faith, hope, or understanding. Because what Cayce revealed is clear. We are eternal beings, forever learning how to return home to God through love, one lifetime at a time. As your consciousness stabilizes in the higher realms, you realize something astonishing. You were never meant to fear death. You were meant to remember life in its fullest form. Cayce often said that to die is to awaken, and that awakening now deepens. You begin to see the threads that connect your lifetimes together, the way you have walked through different bodies, different names, yet remained the same spark of God. Every incarnation appears before you like pages of a sacred book, lessons learned, loves cherished, mistakes redeemed through mercy. The fear of judgment disappears, replaced by understanding. You finally know that God never condemns, only love transforms. The soul recognizes that salvation isn't earned through perfection, but through remembrance of unity with the Creator. You were never separate, you simply forgot. The more you remember, the higher you rise. The landscapes of light around you shift with your awareness. What once looked like space now feels like presence, living consciousness everywhere. Beings of immense light, whom Cayce called helpers or messengers, appear to guide you further. They radiate peace that feels like truth itself. They don't speak of religion or ritual. They remind you of love, of service, of forgiveness. They show that the soul's real measure is how much love it carried while on earth. You feel this not as guilt, but as a call to grow. Every vibration of compassion becomes a step upward. Every memory of kindness becomes light beneath your feet. The universe responds instantly to your thought, proving that divine law is alive and active within you. Then, in a silence beyond sound, a revelation dawns. The same divine presence that welcomed you at death never left you while alive. It was always whispering in moments of intuition, in prayers, in the quiet ache of conscience. You realize that God's guidance wasn't in thunder or miracles, but in every still voice that told you to love, to forgive, to trust. Cayce said that the soul's greatest test is not death, but forgetting God during life. Now you see how easily humanity becomes blind, chasing shadows instead of light. Yet in this state you understand mercy, that even forgetfulness was part of learning. You forgive yourself completely, because now you see as God sees. You sense the presence of Christ again, not as a figure but as light that penetrates every thought. It fills you until there is nothing left to defend, nothing left to hide. This is what Cayce called the baptism of the Spirit. It's not ritual, it's realization. The soul surrenders to divine order and is reborn in awareness. In that union, you finally understand the meaning of eternal life. You were never just a human trying to reach heaven. You were heaven experiencing itself through humanity. The separation collapses. You become whole. The last veil falls. And in this sacred clarity, everything begins to make sense. Every moment of doubt, every tear, every unanswered prayer, all of it had a reason. You see that nothing in life was wasted, not a single second. The struggles that once made you question God were the same fires that purified your soul. Cayce said that every human experience, even pain, is a divine tool shaping the eternal spirit into its truest form. You now see that truth unfolding inside you. Gratitude floods your being. You look back on your life with new eyes, not judging it, but blessing it. You finally understand why you were sent to earth, to learn love in the face of imperfection, to remember the divine even in the noise of mortality. The light around you pulses like a living heart, each rhythm carrying the echo of divine harmony. You realize that this light is not separate from you, it is you. The soul and God are not two beings meeting, they are one consciousness recognizing itself. That understanding fills you with indescribable peace. You feel an invitation to remain, to rest in the light for as long as you wish. Yet part of you looks back at Earth, not with longing, but compassion. You see humanity's suffering and blindness, the way people fear death because they've forgotten love. Cayce said that awakened souls often choose to return, not out of obligation, but out of divine compassion, to serve, to teach, to love. You realize now that life and death are not opposites. They are movements of the same eternal rhythm. From this point, the soul chooses its next step. Some remain in the realms of learning, guided by higher beings who help them understand creation itself. Others prepare for rebirth, ready to continue their journey through new experiences. The choice is made not by command, but by resonance, by what your heart vibrates with. If you are still learning to forgive, you return to learn love again. If you have found peace, you may serve as a light to others, Nothing is lost, nothing wasted. Death, as Cayce revealed, is simply the continuation of life in another classroom of the divine. And as this truth settles into your awareness, a quiet voice speaks within, not in words but in knowing. You are eternal. You are loved. You are never alone. That realization is the true resurrection, the moment the soul finally awakens to its divine origin. As you rest in that eternal light, there is no more fear, no more separation, only infinite peace. The journey that began with a heartbeat ends in the silence of perfect understanding. If these words touched your soul, take a moment now to like this video, subscribe to the channel and share what you felt in the comments. Let your reflection be a light for others. Remember, death is not the end. It is the beginning of remembering who you truly are, a spark of God, eternal, radiant and infinite. This preparation stage involves careful planning and consultation with what Cayce called the Council of Souls, or advanced spiritual guides. In one reading, he described these councils as groups of highly evolved souls who have completed their earthly sojourns and now serve to guide others in their spiritual development. These councils operate under divine law and help souls make wise choices about their next incarnation based on spiritual need rather than personal preference. Together with these counselors, souls review their current development, identify areas needing growth or healing, and select circumstances for the next incarnation that will best serve their evolution. Another reading provides extensive detail about this planning process. The soul, in consultation with its guides, examines what has been learned and what remains to be mastered. They consider which earthly experiences would best provide opportunities to develop needed spiritual qualities, such as patience, compassion, forgiveness, or humility. Cayce emphasized that souls actively participate in choosing their next life circumstances, though not always in ways that human personality would prefer. In one reading, he explained, "The soul chooses not for comfort or ease, but for maximum spiritual growth. A soul needing to develop patience might choose a life filled with delays and obstacles. One needing to learn compassion might choose to experience suffering or to care for others who suffer. This includes selecting parents, cultural environment, historical period, and even physical characteristics that will provide optimal opportunities for growth." Another reading describes how souls consider the karmic connections they have with potential parents. Often souls choose to incarnate with others they have known in previous lives, either to heal relationships that were damaged or to continue working together on shared spiritual goals. The readings describe how souls often choose to reincarnate with groups they've known in previous lifetimes. In one reading, Cayce explained that soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple incarnations, often plan their returns together, taking on different family roles and relationships to provide mutual learning opportunities. A soul who was a parent in one life might return as a child to a former child, or enemies in one life might return as siblings to learn forgiveness and cooperation. This preparation stage also involves the soul reviewing spiritual laws and principles it needs to remember and apply in physical existence. Another reading describes memory banks, where souls store the wisdom they've gained in spiritual realms. While conscious memory of these teachings may fade after birth, they remain embedded in the soul's deeper awareness and can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and spiritual seeking. Some souls require extensive preparation, particularly if they're planning to incarnate into challenging circumstances or take on significant spiritual responsibilities. In one reading, Cayce described souls who spend long periods in training academies, where they develop specific abilities they'll need in their coming incarnation. A soul planning to serve as a healer might study energy manipulation, while one destined for spiritual teaching might develop communication and wisdom abilities. The readings also describe how souls sometimes choose difficult incarnations, specifically to balance previous negative actions. This isn't punishment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of spiritual debt that needs balancing. In another reading, Cayce explained, If a soul caused suffering to others in a previous life, it may choose to experience similar suffering to truly understand the consequences of its actions and develop compassion for those it harmed. Cayce described how the preparation process includes what he called incarnation blueprints, detailed plans that outline the soul's major learning objectives, key relationships, and significant challenges for the coming lifetime. One reading explains that these blueprints are flexible rather than fixed. The soul plans general themes and major learning opportunities, but maintains free will to choose how to respond to these experiences. The blueprint provides structure, but the soul's choices determine the actual outcome. The timing of reincarnation varies greatly according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls don't reincarnate on a fixed schedule, but return when conditions are optimal for their growth. Some souls return relatively quickly, drawn by strong desires or urgent learning needs. Others may spend extensive periods in spiritual realms, either because they need healing, have service work to complete, or because the optimal circumstances for their next incarnation haven't yet manifested on Earth. The preparation stage also involves what Cayce called energy adjustment, the gradual modification of the soul's vibration to match the denser frequencies of physical existence. One reading describes this process. The soul must lower its vibrational rate slowly and carefully to avoid shock when entering dense matter. This adjustment process can take considerable time and is overseen by specialists who ensure the soul's energy patterns remain intact during the transition. Advanced souls often spend extensive time in preparation because they're planning incarnations involving significant service to humanity. In another reading, Cayce described how some souls prepare for lifetimes as spiritual teachers, healers, or leaders by studying with master teachers and developing specific abilities they'll need. These preparation periods might span centuries of Earth time as the soul develops wisdom and capabilities for its coming mission. The readings indicate that preparation includes selecting not only major life circumstances, but also seemingly minor details that will provide important learning opportunities. One reading mentions how souls might choose specific talents, interests, or even health challenges that will guide them toward their planned spiritual development. A soul planning to learn about service might choose a physical limitation that requires dependence on others, while one needing to develop strength might choose circumstances requiring unusual courage and perseverance. Stage 6. Edgar Cayce and the Soul's Journey, a spiritual perspective on life, death, and reincarnation. Throughout human history, one question has persisted across all cultures and civilizations. What happens to our consciousness after physical death? This universal inquiry found a unique perspective through the work of Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, who for over 4 decades provided thousands of psychic readings on various topics, including the nature of the soul and its journey beyond earthly life. Edgar Cayce, 1877-1945, was one of the most documented psychics in modern history. His readings, psychic consultations given while in a trance state, were meticulously recorded and today form one of the largest collections of psychic material ever compiled. Unlike many esoteric traditions that keep their teachings secret, Cayce's work was extensively documented and studied, offering a consistent perspective on fundamental spiritual questions. In Cayce's readings about life after death, we find not a single moment of transition, but rather what he described as a continuous journey of consciousness. According to his teachings, the soul follows patterns and stages that reflect universal spiritual laws. While different readings emphasized various aspects of this journey, several consistent themes emerge that can help us understand what Cayce taught about the soul's experience after physical death. If you've ever wondered about the nature of consciousness beyond physical life, or if you're seeking comfort regarding loved ones who have passed, Cayce's perspective offers both insight and hope. His teachings suggest that death is not an ending, but a transformation, a doorway into expanded awareness and continued growth. Before we explore these teachings in detail, it's important to understand that Cayce's readings present spiritual perspectives rather than scientific facts. They offer one viewpoint among many about life's greatest mysteries. Whether you approach these ideas as literal truth, metaphorical wisdom, or simply food for thought, they contain profound insights about how we might live more consciously in preparation for whatever lies beyond. Central to understanding Cayce's perspective on the afterlife is his fundamental teaching that mind is the builder. This wasn't merely a phrase about earthly existence. According to Cayce, it represents a universal law that continues beyond physical death. The readings consistently emphasized that consciousness, with all its patterns of thought, emotion, and belief, survives the transition we call death. In Cayce's view, the soul doesn't undergo a sudden transformation at the moment of death. Instead, it carries forward the mental and emotional patterns developed during physical life. This perspective suggests that preparation for the afterlife happens not through rituals or last-minute conversions, but through the daily cultivation of consciousness during our earthly existence. The readings describe how our thoughts, attitudes, and spiritual development shape not only our current experience but also our condition in the spiritual realms. This isn't presented as judgment from an external deity, but as a natural consequence of spiritual law. The idea that consciousness creates experience both in physical and non-physical dimensions. When Edgar Cayce spoke about the journey of consciousness after death, he described it as following natural patterns and stages. While the specific details varied across different readings, several consistent phases emerge from his extensive body of work. Understanding these phases, according to Cayce, helps us comprehend not only what may await us after death, but also how our current choices and mental states are already shaping that future experience. Cayce often compared death to falling asleep, not in the sense of unconsciousness, but in the gentle transition from one state of awareness to another. He emphasized that for those who have lived with spiritual awareness and inner peace, the transition is smooth and natural. For those carrying fear, resentment, or strong material attachments, the passage may involve more difficulty, not as punishment, but as the natural result of resistance to spiritual law. The readings suggest that loved ones who have passed before often assist in this transition. Cayce described how souls rarely make this passage entirely alone. There are always helping presences, whether recognized or not, who guide and comfort the departing consciousness. This aspect of his teachings has brought comfort to many who grieve, suggesting that death is not abandonment, but reunion with those who have gone before. What makes Cayce's perspective unique is its practical nature. Rather than abstract theological concepts, his readings offer detailed descriptions of what consciousness experiences as it moves through various stages of existence beyond physical life. These descriptions, drawn from thousands of individual readings, present a coherent view of the afterlife as an active, purposeful continuation of the soul's development. The spiritual dimensions Cayce described are not static realms of eternal reward or punishment, but dynamic environments where consciousness continues to grow, learn, and serve. According to his readings, the soul remains active between earthly incarnations, engaging in various forms of learning, healing, and service that prepare it for future growth opportunities. One of the most profound aspects of Cayce's teachings is the emphasis on personal responsibility. The readings consistently indicate that each soul creates its own experience through the power of consciousness. This places both the challenge and the hope squarely with the individual. We are not victims of arbitrary divine judgment, but active participants in shaping our eternal destiny through our daily choices and inner development. The concept of reincarnation appears throughout Cayce's work, not as endless repetition, but as purposeful return to physical existence for continued learning and service. According to the readings, souls don't reincarnate randomly, but choose circumstances that best serve their spiritual development and the opportunity to balance previous actions through love and service. This perspective transforms how we might view our current life circumstances. Challenges, relationships, and opportunities are not mere coincidences, but carefully chosen experiences designed to advance the soul's growth. This doesn't mean we're trapped by fate, but rather that we're active participants in a cosmic curriculum designed for our highest development. Cayce's readings also address the question of time in spiritual dimensions. According to his perspective, Consciousness in the afterlife is not bound by linear time as we experience it in physical life. This allows for what he described as instantaneous understanding and experience that transcends the gradual learning process we know on Earth. The healing aspect of the afterlife features prominently in Cayce's descriptions. He spoke of spiritual hospitals or restoration centers where souls wounded by trauma, hatred, or destructive patterns receive healing and rehabilitation. This reinforces the idea that no soul is ever beyond hope or help, that divine mercy provides opportunities for healing and renewal regardless of past mistakes or suffering. Understanding these general principles provides the foundation for exploring what Cayce described as the specific stages or phases of the soul's journey after physical death. While these stages shouldn't be viewed as rigid categories, they offer a framework for understanding the natural progression of consciousness as it adapts to and grows within spiritual dimensions. Stage 1. The moment of separation. According to Cayce's readings, the first stage begins with what he described as the loosening of the silver cord, the energetic connection between the physical body and the soul. This separation is portrayed not as a violent rupture, but as a gentle release, often compared to the natural process of falling asleep. In one of his readings, Cayce explained, "The silver cord is broken. That cord through which life, as manifested in the physical consciousness, has its connection with soul and spirit." He described this cord as extending from the brain through what he called the Leyden gland, likely referring to the pineal gland, connecting the physical consciousness to the soul body. The breaking of this cord doesn't happen instantly, but rather gradually, like a rope slowly unraveling strand by strand. The reading suggests that this initial separation can vary greatly depending on the individual's spiritual condition and circumstances of death. In one reading, Cayce described how those who have lived with spiritual ideals experience what he called a glorious transition, where the soul slips away as gently as the morning mist rises from the water. For those who have developed strong spiritual foundations through prayer, meditation, and service to others, the separation feels natural and peaceful. However, for others, particularly those who die suddenly or who have strong attachments to physical life, the process may involve more confusion or resistance. Cayce explained in another reading that souls who are earthbound by desires, appetites, or unfulfilled longings may struggle against the separation, creating what he described as a wrestling between the physical and spiritual bodies. This resistance doesn't prevent the transition but can make it more difficult and prolonged. During this stage, Cayce described how consciousness may hover between two states of awareness, still sensing the physical environment while beginning to perceive spiritual dimensions. In several readings, he mentioned that souls often report being able to see their physical body and observe the reactions of those around them, while simultaneously becoming aware of spiritual presences and dimensions previously invisible. This dual awareness can last from moments to several days, depending on the soul's preparedness and circumstances. The readings indicate that the soul's state of mind at the moment of death significantly influences this initial stage. In one reading, Cayce emphasized that what the soul has built in its mental and spiritual self determines the ease or difficulty of this transition. Fear, regret, or desperate clinging to physical life can create what he called etheric storms that make the separation turbulent and confusing. Conversely, trust, peace, and spiritual surrender create what he described as harmonious vibrations that facilitate a smoother passage. Cayce also described how loved ones who have passed before often become present during this stage, offering comfort and guidance to the departing soul. In another reading, he explained that these helping souls stand ready to assist and often appear to the departing consciousness in forms they would recognize and find comforting. Sometimes they appear as they were in physical life, other times in more radiant spiritual forms. These presences serve as bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds, helping ease the transition. The readings also mention that the soul's beliefs about death significantly impact this stage. Those who believe death is final may struggle more with the transition, while those who understand it as a doorway to continued existence move through more easily. Cayce emphasized in one reading that preparation should include not just moral and spiritual development, but also proper understanding of death as a natural spiritual process. He recommended studying spiritual teachings about the afterlife and practicing meditation to become familiar with expanded states of consciousness. Interestingly, Cayce described how the physical body itself responds during this separation process. In one reading, he mentioned that the soul gradually withdraws from the extremities first, hands and feet, then progressively from other organs, with the final connection being through the brain and nervous system. This explains why some people report feeling cold or numb in their hands and feet as death approaches, and why consciousness often remains clear until the very end. The timing of this separation process varies considerably according to the readings. For some, particularly those ready spiritually, it can happen quickly and peacefully. For others, especially those with strong earthly attachments or unresolved issues, the process may extend over several days. Cayce explained that the soul doesn't fully separate until it's ready to let go of physical concerns and accept its spiritual destiny. Stage 2. The period of rest and adjustment. Following the initial separation, Cayce described what he often called a period of sleep or rest. This isn't unconsciousness in the ordinary sense, but rather a state of adjustment where the soul acclimates to its new condition. Just as a newborn requires time to adapt to physical existence, the newly departed soul needs time to orient itself to spiritual reality. In one reading, Cayce explained this stage in detail. The soul entity passes through that experience as a babe passes into what we call sleep, that condition wherein the physical consciousness is laid aside and the soul communes with those influences that are ever present but not ordinarily aware to the physical consciousness. This spiritual sleep serves multiple purposes, functioning as both rest and preparation for the expanded awareness that follows. The duration of this rest period varies according to Cayce's readings, and he provided specific insights about what determines this timing. In another reading, he explained that souls who lived with strong spiritual ideals and understanding awaken relatively quickly, sometimes within what would be equivalent to days or weeks in earthly time. However, those who died suddenly, violently, or while carrying heavy emotional burdens may remain in this restful state for much longer periods. Cayce described several factors that influence the length of this sleep period. Souls who died with unresolved guilt often require extended rest while healing energies work to dissolve these burdens. In one reading, he mentioned that those who lived primarily for material gain or physical pleasures need more time to adjust to a reality where such things don't exist. Conversely, those who developed strong prayer lives and meditation practices during earthly existence adapt more quickly to spiritual consciousness. During this stage, the soul is surrounded by what Cayce called healing forces that work to restore balance and clarity. In another reading, he described these as emanations of divine love that flow from higher spiritual beings who specialize in assisting newly departed souls. These healing energies work to dissolve fear, guilt, and confusion, while strengthening the soul's natural spiritual radiance. The readings reveal that this period also serves to gradually dissolve the soul's attachment to physical sensations and material concerns. Cayce explained in one reading that the soul must learn to function without the 5 physical senses and instead develop what he called spiritual perception. This is a fundamental shift, from receiving information through eyes, ears, and touch to directly knowing through consciousness itself. Some souls use this rest period to resolve internal conflicts or heal emotional wounds that were carried from earthly life. In another reading, Cayce described how souls often review and process traumatic experiences during this sleep, with the assistance of what he called healing angels, or advanced souls who specialize in emotional restoration. The peaceful environment and absence of physical stress allow for deep healing that wouldn't be possible while incarnated. Cayce also explained that during this rest period, the soul begins to remember its true nature and purpose. In one reading, he described how earthly personality gradually gives way to soul identity, the eternal self that has existed through multiple incarnations. This remembering process can be gradual and gentle for prepared souls, or more dramatic for those who lived primarily through ego consciousness. The readings describe different types of rest environments tailored to individual needs. Some souls rest in what Cayce called gardens of peace, beautiful natural settings that provide comfort and tranquility. Others find themselves in temple-like structures where gentle instruction begins even during the rest period. In another reading, he mentioned that souls often rest near loved ones who passed before, creating family groupings that support mutual healing and adjustment. According to Cayce, no soul remains in this state indefinitely. Awakening always comes, though timing varies with individual needs. He explained in one reading that higher spiritual beings monitor each soul's progress and gently encourage awakening when the time is right. This awakening isn't forced, but occurs naturally as the soul completes its adjustment and becomes ready for more active spiritual experiences. The transition from this rest period to full spiritual awakening is described as gradual and beautiful. In another reading, Cayce compared it to dawn breaking, a slow, gentle increase in awareness and perception until the soul suddenly realizes it's fully conscious in a new realm of existence. This awakening marks the end of the adjustment period and the beginning of active engagement with spiritual realities. Stage 3. Awakening and attraction to spiritual spheres. When the soul awakens from its period of rest, Cayce described how it begins to perceive the spiritual dimensions around it. These aren't vague, ethereal realms, but substantial realities with their own characteristics and inhabitants. The key principle governing this stage is what Cayce consistently described as the law of attraction. Like attracts like. In one of his readings, Cayce provided detailed descriptions of this awakening process. As the soul entity awakens to the consciousness of its spiritual self, it finds itself drawn by the very nature of its being to that sphere, that realm, that condition which is in accord with what it has built within itself during its sojourns in the earth. This attraction operates through what he called spiritual magnetism, an automatic natural force that draws similar vibrations together. The readings describe multiple spiritual spheres or planes, each with distinct characteristics corresponding to different levels of spiritual development. Cayce mentioned in one reading that there are many mansions in the spiritual realm, referencing the biblical passage while explaining that these represent actual dimensional spaces where souls of similar development congregate and continue their growth. For souls whose consciousness has been developed through love, service, and spiritual growth, this attraction leads to what Cayce called realms of light. In another reading, he described these environments as filled with colors beyond earthly imagination and music that is the harmony of the spheres themselves. These realms are populated by souls who radiate love and engage in activities of learning, creating, and serving others. Cayce provided specific details about these higher realms in various readings. In one reading, he described temples of wisdom, where souls study universal laws under the guidance of master teachers. He mentioned halls of healing, where souls learn to work with spiritual energies to assist others, and gardens of beauty, where souls engage in creative activities that express divine harmony through what earthly minds might recognize as art, music, and poetry. Conversely, souls burdened by hatred, selfishness, or destructive patterns find themselves attracted to what Cayce called the borderland, or lower spheres. These aren't places of eternal punishment, but rather environments that reflect the soul's inner condition and provide opportunities for recognition and eventual healing of negative patterns. In one reading, he described these as gray realms, where souls struggle with the very attitudes and desires that drew them there. These lower spheres serve a corrective purpose according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls in these conditions eventually become dissatisfied with their environment and begin to seek something better. This seeking creates the motivation for growth and change. Advanced souls from higher realms often work as counselors and guides in these areas, helping trapped souls recognize their condition and choose differently. Cayce emphasized that this attraction is not imposed by external judgment, but operates as a natural law of spiritual existence. In one reading, he explained, the soul finds itself where its consciousness has prepared a place for it, This is not judgment from without, but the natural consequence of spiritual law that consciousness creates experience. The soul cannot hide from itself in these dimensions. Its true nature becomes evident and shapes its immediate environment. The readings describe how souls often experience surprise or shock when they first recognize their environment, especially if it doesn't match their earthly self-image. In another reading, Cayce mentioned that souls who considered themselves religious or moral during earthly life, but harbored prejudice, judgment, or spiritual pride, might find themselves in less elevated spheres than expected. Conversely, souls who lived with genuine love and service, regardless of their religious affiliation or lack thereof, gravitate toward higher realms. Within these spheres, souls encounter others of similar development, creating communities of consciousness that support mutual growth and understanding. Cayce described in one reading how souls often reunite with those they've known in previous lifetimes, continuing relationships and working together on shared spiritual goals. These reunions aren't always pleasant. Souls may encounter those they harmed in past lives, creating opportunities for forgiveness and healing. The law of attraction in spiritual realms also operates on a more subtle level, according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls are drawn not only to general spheres, but to specific areas within those spheres that match their particular interests and needs. A soul with musical inclinations might find itself in areas where celestial harmony is studied and practiced, while one drawn to healing might gravitate toward regions where restorative arts are taught and applied. Cayce also described how the environment itself responds to the collective consciousness of its inhabitants. In one reading, he mentioned that in higher spheres the thoughts and emotions of loving souls create increasingly beautiful and harmonious surroundings, while in lower spheres, negative mental patterns manifest as restrictive or unpleasant conditions. This creates a feedback loop where environment and consciousness mutually influence each other. The transition between spheres is possible according to the readings, but it requires genuine transformation of consciousness. In another reading, Cayce explained that souls cannot simply decide to move to a higher sphere. They must actually develop the spiritual qualities that would naturally attract them there. This development often happens through service to other souls in lower conditions, which builds the love and compassion necessary for spiritual advancement. Stage 4. The Life Review. One of the most consistently described experiences in Cayce's readings is what he called the Life Review, a comprehensive examination of the soul's recent earthly existence. This review is not conducted by external judges, but is guided by the soul's own higher self, that aspect of consciousness that maintains clear spiritual perspective beyond ego and illusion. According to Cayce, this review involves more than simple memory recall. In one reading, he described it as a reliving of every experience, every thought, every action from the perspective of universal law. The soul actually re-experiences its life from multiple perspectives, feeling not only its own experiences, but also the effects of its actions on others. Every thought, word, and deed is examined in the light of spiritual truth, revealing the true impact of the soul's choices. This process can be profoundly humbling for souls who caused harm to others, as they directly experience the pain they inflicted. In another reading, Cayce explained, "As the entity reviews its life, it feels within itself all that it gave to others, the joys and the sorrows, the help and the hurt. There is no hiding from the self in this examination. Conversely, it can be deeply affirming for those who lived with compassion and service, as they feel the positive effects they created rippling through other lives." The review is thorough and honest, leaving no room for self-deception or rationalization. Cayce described in one reading how souls often express amazement at seeing their earthly life from this expanded perspective. The entity sees how small actions created great effects, how seemingly insignificant moments of kindness brought healing to others, and how thoughtless words or deeds created suffering that spread far beyond what was imagined. Cayce emphasized that this life review is not about condemnation, but about understanding and learning. In another reading, he explained, "The purpose is not punishment, but instruction. The soul must understand the consequences of free will choices in order to make better choices in future opportunities for growth. The soul sees clearly what it failed to recognize during earthly life, the interconnectedness of all actions, and the responsibility that comes with free will. The reading suggests that this review is conducted in the presence of what Cayce called the recording angels, or keepers of the records, advanced spiritual beings who help the soul process and understand its experiences. In one reading, he described these entities as beings of pure love who have transcended judgment and serve only to illuminate truth and assist understanding. These guides don't judge, but rather help illuminate the spiritual lessons embedded in earthly experiences. During this process, the soul encounters what Cayce referred to as the Book of Life. Not a literal book, but the complete energetic record of every soul's existence across all incarnations. In another reading, he explained that this record is maintained in what he called the Akashic Records, a cosmic library where every thought, action, and experience is permanently stored and can be accessed for learning and growth. For many souls, the Life Review reveals the need for forgiveness, both giving and receiving. Cayce described in one reading how souls often discover that people they thought had wronged them were actually providing necessary learning experiences, while realizing they themselves had created harm through thoughtlessness or selfishness. This recognition creates powerful motivation for healing relationships in future incarnations. The review also reveals patterns that may have operated below conscious awareness during earthly life. In another reading, Cayce described how souls see recurring themes across their recent lifetime, perhaps a pattern of avoiding responsibility, or a tendency toward jealousy, or a habit of seeking control over others. These patterns become visible as threads running through many different situations and relationships. Cayce explained that the emotional intensity of this review varies depending on how the soul lived. In one reading, he noted that souls who practiced regular self-examination during earthly life experienced the review as largely confirmation of what they already knew about themselves. However, souls who avoided self-reflection or lived largely unconsciously may find the experience overwhelming, requiring assistance from spiritual counselors to process the revelations. The review process also illuminates the soul's spiritual growth during the recent lifetime. Cayce described in another reading how souls can see exactly when and how they made progress, moments when they chose love over fear, service over selfishness, forgiveness over resentment. These moments shine like lights in the review, showing the soul its authentic spiritual achievements. Interestingly, the readings indicate that this review includes not only actions and their consequences, but also missed opportunities. In one reading, Cayce mentioned that souls see the roads not taken, moments when they could have chosen differently, situations where they could have helped others or grown spiritually, but failed to recognize the opportunity. This isn't shown to create regret, but to increase awareness for future choices. The Life Review concludes with what Cayce called the weighing, not a judgment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of its spiritual condition based on the complete evidence of its recent life. In another reading, he explained that this weighing determines the soul's next steps, whether it needs healing, further learning, service opportunities, or preparation for another incarnation. Stage 5. Activity in spiritual realms. Following the Life Review, souls don't remain idle but engage in various forms of activity within the spiritual dimensions. Cayce's descriptions of these activities vary widely, reflecting the diverse needs and development levels of different souls, but all serve the purpose of continued growth and service. Some souls remain relatively close to the earth plane, drawn by unfinished business or concern for loved ones still in physical life. In one reading, Cayce described these as earthbound entities who haven't fully accepted their transition and continue to attempt communication with the physical world. However, he distinguished between souls who are trapped by negative attachments and those who choose to remain near Earth for constructive purposes, such as guiding and protecting family members. These earthbound souls may attempt to communicate with or assist those on Earth, though their ability to do so depends on various factors. In another reading, Cayce explained that successful communication requires both the departed soul's development of spiritual communication abilities and the living person's receptivity and sensitivity. He described how some souls learn to influence dreams, inspire sudden insights, or create synchronistic events to convey messages to loved ones. Other souls move into what Cayce described as realms of learning or universities of the soul. In one reading, he provided detailed descriptions of these educational environments. There are institutions of learning where souls study the laws of creation, the nature of divine love, and the principles governing spiritual evolution. These schools are more real and substantial than earthly universities, for learning happens through direct knowing rather than intellectual study. These educational realms operate according to different principles than earthly learning. In another reading, Cayce explained that souls absorb knowledge directly through consciousness rather than through reading or listening. Advanced teacher souls share their understanding through what he called thought transmission, a form of communication where complete concepts and experiences are shared instantaneously. Students in these schools might study the mathematics of creation, the harmony of celestial music, or the healing properties of divine light. Cayce also described realms of service, where souls assist in various forms of healing and guidance work. In one reading, he mentioned souls who specialize in helping newly departed entities adjust to spiritual existence, serving as counselors and guides for those struggling with the transition. Other souls work with those still on Earth by providing inspiration and subtle guidance, often operating through what humans perceive as intuition or sudden insights. Particularly significant in Cayce's descriptions are what he called healing centers or hospitals of the soul. Another reading provides extensive detail about these facilities. There are realms dedicated entirely to the restoration of souls damaged by trauma, violence, hatred, or despair. These centers are staffed by master healers who work with pure spiritual energy to repair and restore the soul's natural radiance and harmony. This healing work addresses not only damage from the recent lifetime, but also accumulated wounds from multiple incarnations. The healing process in these centers involves what Cayce called light therapy, the application of divine energies that dissolve negative patterns and restore spiritual wholeness. In one reading, he described how souls undergoing this healing are immersed in pools of living light that penetrate every aspect of their being, dissolving fear, guilt, anger, and despair while strengthening their connection to divine love. The readings describe how souls may move between different types of activity as their needs and development change. Some alternate between learning and service, while others focus intensively on healing work, either for themselves or others. In another reading, Cayce explained that this variety serves the soul's need for balanced development. As a soul grows in one area, it naturally seeks to express that growth through service, which then reveals new areas needing development. Throughout these activities, souls continue to interact with others they've known in various lifetimes, working together on shared spiritual goals and healing relationships that may have been damaged in physical existence. One reading describes how soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple lifetimes, often work together in spiritual realms, supporting each other's growth and preparing for future incarnations together. Cayce described specialized service roles that some souls undertake. In another reading, he mentioned guardian souls who take responsibility for watching over specific individuals or families on Earth, providing protection and guidance. Other souls become inspirational agents who work to inspire creativity, scientific discovery, or spiritual awakening in those still incarnated. Some serve as intercession souls who help transmit prayers and spiritual requests between earthly and divine realms. The concept of spiritual creativity features prominently in these descriptions. One reading explains how souls in higher realms engage in divine artistry, creating beauty through pure thought and spiritual energy. These creations aren't art as humans understand it, but expressions of spiritual truth that can inspire and uplift other souls. Music in these realms consists of harmonies that express cosmic principles, while visual arts manifest the very essence of divine qualities like love, joy, and peace. Cayce also described souls who work in what he called laboratories of consciousness, realms where advanced souls study the mechanisms of creation itself. In another reading, he mentioned souls who investigate the building blocks of reality and learn to work with the fundamental forces that shape both spiritual and physical worlds. This knowledge prepares them for eventual roles as co-creators with divine intelligence. The duration of activity in these realms varies enormously according to the readings. Some souls spend relatively brief periods before choosing to reincarnate, while others may engage in spiritual realm activities for centuries or even millennia of Earth time. In one reading, Cayce explained that time itself operates differently in spiritual dimensions, with some souls accomplishing vast amounts of learning and service in what seems like brief periods, while others take extensive time to heal or develop specific spiritual qualities. Stage 6. Preparation for return. Eventually, most souls begin preparation for return to physical existence. According to Cayce's readings, reincarnation is not a punishment or endless cycle, but a purposeful return designed to provide specific learning opportunities that advance the soul's spiritual development. This preparation stage involves careful planning and consultation with what Cayce called the Council of Souls, or advanced spiritual guides. In one reading, he described these councils as groups of highly evolved souls who have completed their earthly sojourns and now serve to guide others in their spiritual development. These councils operate under divine law and help souls make wise choices about their next incarnation based on spiritual need rather than personal preference. Together with these counselors, souls review their current development, identify areas needing growth or healing, and select circumstances for the next incarnation that will best serve their evolution. Another reading provides extensive detail about this planning process. The soul, in consultation with its guides, examines what has been learned and what remains to be mastered. They consider which earthly experiences would best provide opportunities to develop needed spiritual qualities, such as patience, compassion, forgiveness, or humility. Cayce emphasized that souls actively participate in choosing their next life circumstances, though not always in ways that human personality would prefer. In one reading, he explained, "The soul chooses not for comfort or ease, but for maximum spiritual growth. A soul needing to develop patience might choose a life filled with delays and obstacles. One needing to learn compassion might choose to experience suffering or to care for others who suffer. This includes selecting parents, cultural environment, historical period, and even physical characteristics that will provide optimal opportunities for growth." Another reading describes how souls consider the karmic connections they have with potential parents. Often souls choose to incarnate with others they have known in previous lives, either to heal relationships that were damaged or to continue working together on shared spiritual goals. The readings describe how souls often choose to reincarnate with groups they've known in previous lifetimes. In one reading, Cayce explained that soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple incarnations, often plan their returns together, taking on different family roles and relationships to provide mutual learning opportunities. A soul who was a parent in one life might return as a child to a former child, or enemies in one life might return as siblings to learn forgiveness and cooperation. This preparation stage also involves the soul reviewing spiritual laws and principles it needs to remember and apply in physical existence. Another reading describes memory banks, where souls store the wisdom they've gained in spiritual realms. While conscious memory of these teachings may fade after birth, they remain embedded in the soul's deeper awareness and can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and spiritual seeking. Some souls require extensive preparation, particularly if they're planning to incarnate into challenging circumstances or take on significant spiritual responsibilities. In one reading, Cayce described souls who spend long periods in training academies, where they develop specific abilities they'll need in their coming incarnation. A soul planning to serve as a healer might study energy manipulation, while one destined for spiritual teaching might develop communication and wisdom abilities. The readings also describe how souls sometimes choose difficult incarnations, specifically to balance previous negative actions. This isn't punishment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of spiritual debt that needs balancing. In another reading, Cayce explained, if a soul caused suffering to others in a previous life, it may choose to experience similar suffering to truly understand the consequences of its actions and develop compassion for those it harmed. Cayce described how the preparation process includes what he called incarnation blueprints, detailed plans that outline the soul's major learning objectives, key relationships, and significant challenges for the coming lifetime. One reading explains that these blueprints are flexible rather than fixed. The soul plans general themes and major learning opportunities, but maintains free will to choose how to respond to these experiences. The blueprint provides structure, but the soul's choices determine the actual outcome. The timing of reincarnation varies greatly according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls don't reincarnate on a fixed schedule, but return when conditions are optimal for their growth. Some souls return relatively quickly, drawn by strong desires or urgent learning needs. Others may spend extensive periods in spiritual realms, either because they need healing, have service work to complete, or because the optimal circumstances for their next incarnation haven't yet manifested on Earth. The preparation stage also involves what Cayce called energy adjustment, the gradual modification of the soul's vibration to match the denser frequencies of physical existence. One reading describes this process. The soul must lower its vibrational rate slowly and carefully to avoid shock when entering dense matter. This adjustment process can take considerable time and is overseen by specialists who ensure the soul's energy patterns remain intact during the transition. Advanced souls often spend extensive time in preparation because they're planning incarnations involving significant service to humanity. In another reading, Cayce described how some souls prepare for lifetimes as spiritual teachers, healers, or leaders by studying with master teachers and developing specific abilities they'll need. These preparation periods might span centuries of Earth time as the soul develops wisdom and capabilities for its coming mission. The readings indicate that preparation includes selecting not only major life circumstances, but also seemingly minor details that will provide important learning opportunities. One reading mentions how souls might choose specific talents, interests, or even health challenges that will guide them toward their planned spiritual development. A soul planning to learn about service might choose a physical limitation that requires dependence on others, while one needing to develop strength might choose circumstances requiring unusual courage and perseverance. Stage 7. The return to physical existence. The final stage in Cayce's description involves the soul's gradual return to physical existence. This isn't an abrupt entry into a new body, but a progressive process that begins long before birth and continues for some time after. According to the readings, the soul becomes magnetically attracted to its chosen parents before conception occurs. In one reading, Cayce described this attraction as operating through spiritual resonance. The soul is drawn to parents whose combined energies will provide the exact genetic, emotional, and environmental conditions needed for its planned development. This attraction isn't based on the parents' conscious worthiness, but on their ability to provide specific learning opportunities the soul requires. The soul hovers near the family, influenced by and influencing the energies of the household, sometimes for months or even years before conception. Another reading explains this preliminary connection. The soul that will incarnate often begins influencing the family unit long before physical conception, helping to create conditions that will support its coming growth. This influence may manifest as changes in the parent's spiritual interests, relationship dynamics, or life circumstances. At conception, the soul begins the complex process of merging with the developing physical form. Cayce described this in one reading as a gradual wedding of spirit and matter that requires careful coordination between the soul's energy and the developing body's capacity to hold that energy. This merger isn't instantaneous but occurs progressively as the physical form develops sufficient complexity to house consciousness. Throughout pregnancy, the connection strengthens as the soul adjusts to operating through dense physical matter once again. Another reading provides detailed information about this process. During gestation, the soul works to align its energy patterns with the developing nervous system. The physical brain and body are gradually prepared to serve as vehicles for the soul's expression, though this preparation continues long after birth. Cayce described how the soul's presence affects fetal development and how the developing body is shaped by the soul's energy patterns. In one reading, he explained that the soul's vibrations influence not only physical development, but also the formation of personality tendencies, natural talents, and even health patterns that will manifest throughout the lifetime. This suggests that many characteristics we consider genetic are actually influenced by the incoming soul's spiritual nature. The readings indicate that the soul doesn't maintain constant connection during pregnancy, but moves in and out of the developing body as conditions permit. Another reading describes this variable connection. The soul may be fully present during some periods of gestation and partially withdrawn during others, depending on the body's developmental stage and the soul's ability to function through increasingly dense matter. Birth represents a critical transition point, but not the completion of the soul's incarnation process. Cayce explained in one reading that birth is the soul's commitment point, the moment when it fully accepts responsibility for expression through physical form, though complete integration may take years to accomplish. The trauma of birth itself can temporarily disrupt the soul's connection, requiring a period of restabilization. The readings suggest that young children often retain closer connection to spiritual awareness, which gradually fades as they adapt to physical reality and develop ego consciousness. Another reading describes how children up to age 7 often display memories, abilities, or knowledge that cannot be explained through their current life experience, because their connection to their soul self remains relatively strong during these early years. This gradual forgetting is described as both necessary and merciful, allowing the soul to fully engage with its chosen life circumstances without being overwhelmed by memories of spiritual existence or past lifetimes. However, one reading explains that the deeper lessons and purposes remain embedded in the soul's unconscious awareness, guiding choices and development throughout the lifetime, even when not consciously remembered. Cayce emphasized that each return to physical existence represents a sacred opportunity and responsibility. In another reading, he stated, "Every incarnation is a privilege, a chance for the soul to work with divine creative forces in dense matter, to transform both itself and the world through love and service." The soul that returns brings gifts developed in spiritual realms and has the opportunity to manifest these gifts for the benefit of all. The cycle of death, spiritual development, and rebirth continues until the soul has mastered all lessons available through physical existence. One reading describes this graduation. When the soul has learned to consistently choose love over fear, service over selfishness, and wisdom over ignorance in all circumstances, it no longer requires incarnation for its development. It then moves on to higher forms of service in spiritual realms. However, Cayce noted that some highly developed souls choose to continue incarnating not for their own growth, but to serve humanity's spiritual evolution. Another reading explains, "Master souls often return repeatedly to serve as teachers, healers, and guides for less developed souls. Their incarnations are acts of sacrifice and love, designed to help lift human consciousness toward divine realization." The process of return also involves what Cayce called karmic integration, the soul's acceptance of responsibility for balancing previous actions through love and service. One reading describes how the soul carries forward both the consequences of past choices and the wisdom gained from previous experiences, creating a foundation for continued growth and the opportunity to transform any negative patterns through conscious spiritual effort. Understanding this complete cycle from Cayce's perspective transforms how we might view both life and death. If our current existence is part of an eternal journey of growth and service, then every experience becomes meaningful, every choice carries weight, and every moment offers opportunity for spiritual advancement. Death becomes not an ending to fear, but a graduation to prepare for, and life becomes the sacred workshop where souls develop the love and wisdom that serve them throughout eternity. Understanding these 7 stages provides insight not only into what may await us after death, but also into how we might live more consciously now. If our thoughts and actions are shaping our future spiritual experience, then every moment becomes an opportunity to build a foundation of wisdom, love, and service that will serve us well in whatever lies beyond. Cayce's teachings suggest that preparation for these stages happens through the daily cultivation of spiritual awareness. Practices like meditation, prayer, study of spiritual principles, and service to others all contribute to developing the consciousness that will navigate spiritual dimensions with clarity and purpose. The emphasis throughout Cayce's work is on hope and opportunity, rather than fear and judgment. Death is presented not as an end to be dreaded, but as a transition to be prepared for with faith and wisdom. The spiritual realms are not alien territories, but the soul's true home, where it can continue the eternal journey of growth, learning, and service in increasingly expanded awareness. Most importantly, these teachings remind us that love is the fundamental force operating throughout all these stages. Love guides the soul through transition, shapes its experience in spiritual realms, and motivates its return to physical existence. By cultivating love in our current life, love for others, love for growth, love for truth, and love for the divine, we prepare ourselves for whatever stages of existence await us in the eternal journey of the soul. Whether we view these teachings as literal descriptions or symbolic wisdom, they offer profound insights into living with greater consciousness, compassion, and purpose. They remind us that our choices matter not only for this lifetime, but for the ongoing evolution of our eternal spiritual nature. In sharing these perspectives from Edgar Cayce's extensive body of readings, we hope to contribute to your own spiritual understanding and preparation for life's greatest mystery. Whatever your beliefs about death and afterlife, may this exploration inspire you to live with greater awareness, kindness, and dedication to the spiritual growth that serves both yourself and all of humanity. During the Great Depression, Edgar Cayce entered one of his deepest trances and delivered what would become his most profound series of readings about the afterlife. For over 2 hours, this sleeping prophet from Kentucky described in extraordinary detail the immediate experiences every soul encounters after leaving the physical body. What he revealed that day would later be validated by decades of near-death experience research, confirming truths that challenge everything we thought we knew about death. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. The family who received that reading had initially come to Cayce seeking help for a completely different issue. They had no idea they were about to witness one of the most detailed descriptions of the afterlife transition ever documented. By the end of that session, everyone in the room understood they had experienced something that would change humanity's understanding of consciousness forever. Edgar Cayce, America's most documented psychic, gave over 14,000 readings throughout his lifetime. But his revelations about the transition beyond physical death remain some of his most transformative teachings. If you've ever wondered what really happens in those first moments after we cross over, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'll mark each one with a heart, because this sacred topic deserves our deepest reverence. And if these insights resonate with your soul, subscribe to join our community, exploring the mysteries of consciousness and spiritual awakening. What makes Cayce's afterlife descriptions so remarkable isn't just their detail, it's how they've been consistently validated by modern science. Dr. Kenneth Ring, one of the world's leading near-death experience researchers, has documented over 3,000 cases that mirror exactly what Cayce described decades earlier. The correlation is so precise that some researchers believe Cayce was accessing the same cosmic information that near-death experiencers encounter during their journeys. Throughout his career in Virginia Beach and beyond, Cayce consistently described 5 universal experiences that every departing soul encounters. These weren't vague spiritual concepts, but detailed descriptions of actual phenomena that modern researchers would later document in thousands of near-death experience cases. But what you're about to discover goes far beyond just what happens after death. These revelations completely transform our understanding of what it means to be human. The first experience, immediate recognition of continuity. In his readings about the afterlife transition, Cayce consistently described what he called the immediate recognition of continuity. According to his documented sessions, the very first thing every soul experiences is the profound realization that consciousness doesn't end with physical death. It simply continues in a different form. But here's where Cayce's description becomes absolutely mind-blowing. He explained that this recognition isn't just intellectual understanding. It's what he termed cellular memory awakening. Every soul suddenly remembers that they've made this transition countless times before. Death isn't new or foreign, it's as familiar as coming home after a long journey. Cayce explained in his readings that this recognition isn't gradual or confused. Instead, departed souls experience an instant, overwhelming understanding that they haven't ceased to exist. In one of his most detailed readings about this transition, he described how souls are amazed by the naturalness of this new state, as if they were simply moving from one room to another in the same house. What makes this even more extraordinary is how Cayce described the soul's reaction to this recognition. According to his readings, there's often what he called cosmic laughter. Not amusement, but a deep, joyful recognition of how seriously they had taken the illusion of physical limitation. It's like waking up from a vivid dream and suddenly remembering your true identity. But here's what made Cayce's description remarkable. He emphasized that this continuity comes with expanded awareness. According to his readings, souls don't just realize they still exist, they suddenly understand existence itself in a completely new way. The limitations of physical thinking fall away, replaced by what Cayce termed cosmic consciousness, an awareness that encompasses far more than the human mind could ever grasp. During his sessions in the 1940s, Cayce described how this expanded awareness allows souls to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can see the physical plane they just left, the spiritual dimensions they're entering, and even glimpse future incarnations and past lives all at once. It's not overwhelming because their consciousness has expanded to accommodate this cosmic perspective. Modern near-death researchers like Dr. Raymond Moody have documented thousands of cases reporting this exact same phenomenon. People consistently describe that moment of recognition when they understand that death is truly just a doorway, not a destination. Dr. Pim van Lommel's groundbreaking research in the Netherlands found that 97% of near-death experiencers report this immediate recognition that consciousness continues beyond physical death. The second experience, the life review process. The second universal experience Cayce described in his readings is what he called the review of the soul's journey. This isn't a judgment imposed by external forces, but rather the soul's own comprehensive understanding of its recent lifetime and how every experience contributed to spiritual growth. But wait until you hear what Cayce revealed about how this review actually works. According to his most detailed readings on this subject, the soul doesn't just observe their life, they experience it from every perspective involved. They feel not only their own emotions throughout their lifetime, but also the emotions of everyone they impacted. Every act of kindness creates waves of joy they can now feel. Every moment of harm brings understanding of the pain they caused others. According to Cayce's most detailed readings on this subject, this review happens in what feels like an instant, but encompasses the soul's entire understanding of every thought, action, and intention from the just completed lifetime. The departed soul sees not just what happened, but why it happened and how each experience served their spiritual development. Here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. Cayce described that during this review, souls often discover that their most challenging experiences were actually their greatest spiritual victories. The divorce that felt devastating was the catalyst that led them to discover their inner strength. The job loss that seemed like failure was the push they needed to pursue their true purpose. The illness that brought suffering also brought compassion and wisdom. Cayce emphasized in his readings that this review is conducted with perfect love and understanding. There's no external judge. The soul itself, now freed from earthly limitations, can see clearly how every joy and every challenge contributed to its evolution. In his sessions about this process, he described how souls often express wonder at the perfection of their life's design, even in moments that seemed random or painful while they were living. During his readings in the war years, Cayce revealed something that brings incredible comfort to grieving families. Souls reviewing their lives often discover that their greatest regrets from Earth were actually unnecessary. The words they wish they had spoken were heard by loved ones through their unexpressed love. The forgiveness they thought they never received was already granted. The legacy they feared they hadn't left was actually profound and lasting. But here's what makes this review process truly transformative. According to Cayce's readings, souls don't just review their recent lifetime, they begin to see the patterns across all their incarnations. They understand how the shy child in this lifetime was developing the humility they needed after being arrogant in a previous life. They see how their struggles with relationships in this incarnation were healing wounds created in other lifetimes. What's particularly fascinating is how Cayce's descriptions align perfectly with modern near-death experience reports. Thousands of people have described this same panoramic life review, where they experience not just their own perspective, but also the perspectives of everyone they impacted throughout their lifetime. Dr. Kenneth Ring's research found that 89% of deep near-death experiences report this comprehensive life review exactly as Cayce described it. The third experience: recognition of spiritual companions. The third experience Cayce consistently described in his afterlife readings is the recognition of what he called spiritual companions, beings who have guided and loved the soul across multiple lifetimes and dimensions. According to his documented sessions, this recognition is immediate and deeply familiar. But here's what will absolutely blow your mind about this reunion. Cayce revealed that these spiritual companions have been present throughout the soul's entire earthly journey. They weren't waiting on the other side. They were right there all along, just beyond the veil of physical perception. Every moment of comfort during difficult times, every sudden inspiration or moment of clarity, every coincidence that guided them toward growth, these were all interventions from their spiritual family. In his readings about the transition process, Cayce explained that newly departed souls are greeted by their spiritual guides, departed loved ones, and what he termed soul companions, beings they've journeyed with across many lifetimes. But this isn't just a reunion with people from their recent life. It's a recognition of eternal spiritual family that transcends any single incarnation. According to Cayce's sessions, when souls recognize these spiritual companions, they experience what he called soul recognition, a knowing that goes far deeper than memory. They don't just remember these beings, they feel the eternal love connection that has existed across eons. It's like recognizing your identical twin after years of separation, but magnified 1,000-fold. Here's what makes this reunion even more incredible. Cayce described how souls often recognize that many of their earthly relationships were actually these same spiritual companions playing different roles. The difficult boss who pushed them to grow might be their most beloved spiritual teacher. The challenging family member who taught them patience could be their dearest soul companion. The brief encounter with a stranger who said exactly what they needed to hear might have been their spiritual guide, taking physical form for just that moment. Cayce's readings described how these meetings are filled with joy and celebration rather than sadness or adjustment. The soul immediately remembers these eternal relationships and understands that physical separation was always temporary. According to his sessions, these spiritual companions have been aware of and supporting the soul's earthly journey all along. But wait, there's something even more amazing that Cayce revealed about these spiritual companions. In his readings about soul groups, he explained that we typically incarnate with the same group of souls over and over again, playing different roles in each lifetime to help each other grow. Your spouse in this lifetime might have been your child in a previous incarnation. Your best friend could have been your sibling in another life. Your greatest teacher might have been your student when roles were reversed. During his sessions in Virginia Beach, Cayce described how this recognition of spiritual companions often brings profound healing to souls who felt unloved or abandoned during their earthly life. They suddenly understand that they were never alone, never unloved, never forgotten. Every prayer was heard, every tear was witnessed, every struggle was supported by an entire team of spiritual beings who loved them unconditionally. This aspect of Cayce's teachings has been powerfully validated by near-death experience research. Countless people report being greeted by deceased relatives, spiritual beings, and guides who feel deeply familiar, even when they weren't part of their recent earthly experience. Dr. PMH Atwater's research with over 4,000 near-death experiences found that 94% report meeting spiritual beings who feel like eternal family. The fourth experience: understanding of free will and choice. In his most profound readings about the afterlife, Cayce described the fourth universal experience as the soul's complete understanding of free will and its eternal power to choose its spiritual path. According to his documented sessions, this understanding brings what he called divine liberation. But here's what makes this revelation absolutely revolutionary. Cayce explained that souls suddenly understand that free will extends far beyond what they realized while incarnated. They discover they have choices they never knew existed. They can choose to reincarnate immediately or spend eons in spiritual dimensions learning and serving. They can choose to become guides for other souls or to explore realms of existence beyond current human comprehension. Cayce's readings revealed that departed souls suddenly comprehend that they have always been and continue to be co-creators of their spiritual journey. They understand that every experience in their recent lifetime was chosen for growth, and they now have the freedom to choose their path forward from this new dimension of existence. According to his sessions during the 1940s, this understanding of choice brings what Cayce called cosmic responsibility. Souls realize that with infinite freedom comes infinite opportunity to serve the greater good of all existence. They understand that their choices don't just affect their own spiritual evolution, but contribute to the spiritual evolution of all consciousness. Here's where this gets absolutely mind-blowing. Cayce revealed that souls in this state can choose to split their consciousness, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions and even multiple incarnations. Advanced souls might choose to incarnate as several different people at the same time, living multiple lives to accelerate their spiritual growth and service to others. But here's what made this revelation particularly comforting in Cayce's readings. Souls also understand that they can choose to maintain loving connections with those still in physical form. They're not required to move on or detach completely. Instead, they gain the wisdom to love and support from their expanded awareness without interfering with the growth experiences of their earthly loved ones. During his readings about communication between dimensions, Cayce explained that departed souls can choose to send signs, inspiration, and comfort to their loved ones on Earth. But they do so with perfect wisdom about when such communication will help, rather than hinder their loved one's spiritual growth. Every dream visitation, every sudden sense of presence, every meaningful coincidence is a conscious choice made by departed souls to remind their earthly family that love transcends all boundaries. According to Cayce's sessions on this topic, this understanding of choice extends to the soul's future incarnations, spiritual lessons, and service to other souls. The departed realize they're eternal beings with infinite opportunities for growth and service across multiple dimensions of existence. But here's something that will transform how you think about your current life. Cayce revealed that souls in this state often choose to send guidance back to their own earthly incarnation. Yes, you read that right. Your future self, the you that exists after this lifetime, may be guiding your current choices and sending you inspiration from beyond time. That sudden insight, that persistent feeling to make a certain choice, that dream that changes everything. It might be your own expanded consciousness guiding you from the future. The fifth experience, access to universal knowledge. The fifth and perhaps most extraordinary experience Cayce described in his afterlife readings is the soul's sudden access to what he called universal knowledge, or the Akashic records. According to his documented sessions, departed souls gain the ability to understand cosmic truths that were hidden during physical incarnation. But prepare yourself for what Cayce revealed about this cosmic library. It's not just a collection of information. It's a living, interactive dimension of consciousness where souls can experience any event that has ever occurred, explore any possibility that could occur, and understand the connections between all things across all time and space. In his readings about this phenomenon, Cayce explained that souls can suddenly comprehend the interconnectedness of all existence, the purpose behind cosmic laws, and their role in the greater spiritual evolution of consciousness itself. This isn't overwhelming information dumps, but rather a natural expansion of awareness that feels completely normal in their new state. According to Cayce's sessions, when souls access these records, they can instantly understand the spiritual reasons behind world events, the karmic patterns that connect all souls, and the ultimate destiny of human consciousness. They see how every thought, every action, every choice ripples through the cosmic web of existence, affecting everything and everyone in ways that the human mind could never comprehend. Here's what makes this access to universal knowledge absolutely staggering. Cayce described how souls can explore not just what has been, but what could be. They can examine alternate timelines where different choices were made, explore potential futures based on current planetary consciousness, and understand how their own decisions across lifetimes have shaped the evolution of entire civilizations. Cayce's readings described how souls use this expanded knowledge to understand their past incarnations, recognize patterns in their spiritual development, and comprehend the lessons they came to Earth to learn. According to his sessions, this knowledge also helps them understand how to best serve other souls, both those still incarnated and those in spiritual dimensions. During his readings in the late 1930s, Cayce revealed that access to universal knowledge allows souls to understand the true history of Earth, including civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria that most humans have forgotten. They can see the spiritual technologies these ancient civilizations possessed, understand why they fell, and recognize how their souls contributed to both the achievements and the destruction of these advanced societies. But here's something that will completely revolutionize your understanding of life purpose. Cayce explained that souls with access to universal knowledge can see the future of human consciousness. They understand where humanity is headed spiritually, what challenges and opportunities lie ahead, and how their own future incarnations will contribute to this cosmic evolution. This knowledge helps them choose their next incarnation with perfect wisdom about when, where, and under what circumstances they can be most helpful to humanity's spiritual awakening. Perhaps most remarkably, Cayce's descriptions of this expanded awareness perfectly match what advanced near-death experiencers report when they describe accessing universal consciousness or cosmic knowledge during their experiences. Dr. Kenneth Ring documented cases where people returned from near-death experiences with knowledge they couldn't have acquired through normal means, scientific information that hadn't been discovered yet, historical details about events they never studied, and spiritual insights that transformed their understanding of existence. According to Cayce's readings, some souls become so enthralled with this access to universal knowledge that they choose to remain in these dimensions for extended periods, serving as cosmic librarians and teachers for other souls making the transition. They become part of what he called the Council of Knowledge, advanced beings who help newly departed souls understand their eternal nature and choose their path forward. The profound connection between life and death. Here's where Edgar Cayce's revelations become absolutely life-changing for those of us still incarnated. Everything he described about the afterlife experience is actually accessible to us right now. In his readings about meditation and spiritual development, Cayce explained that these same 5 experiences can be touched during deep spiritual states while we're still alive. During his sessions about spiritual development, Cayce revealed that meditation, prayer, and service to others can give us glimpses of that recognition of continuity. We can experience moments where we know with absolute certainty that we are eternal beings. The life review process can happen through honest self-reflection and taking responsibility for our actions. Recognition of spiritual companions occurs when we feel guided, supported, and loved by unseen presences. Understanding our free will and choice becomes clear when we take responsibility for creating our reality. And access to universal knowledge opens up through intuition, inspiration, and those moments of knowing that seem to come from beyond our personal experience. According to Cayce's readings about the purpose of incarnation, we don't come to Earth to prepare for the afterlife. We come to Earth to bring the afterlife into physical expression. We're here to demonstrate that consciousness is eternal, that love transcends all boundaries, that spiritual laws govern physical reality, and that every soul is connected to every other soul in the cosmic web of existence. The scientific validation. What makes Edgar Cayce's afterlife revelations even more extraordinary is how consistently they've been validated by modern consciousness research. The International Association for Near-Death Studies has documented over 15,000 cases that mirror exactly what Cayce described in his readings decades before this research began. Dr. Sam Parnia's groundbreaking AWARE study, conducted in hospitals across multiple countries, found evidence that consciousness continues during cardiac arrest, exactly what Cayce described as the recognition of continuity. Dr. Bruce Grayson's research at the University of Virginia has documented hundreds of cases where near-death experiencers returned with verified information they couldn't have acquired through normal means. Validation of Cayce's descriptions of access to universal knowledge. The shared death experience research conducted by Dr. Raymond Moody has documented cases where healthy individuals present at the moment of someone's death experience the same 5 phenomena Cayce described. Further evidence that these aren't hallucinations, but actual experiences of consciousness transitioning between dimensions. The eternal implications. What makes Edgar Cayce's revelations about these 5 experiences so profound is how they completely transform our understanding of what it means to be human. We're not physical beings having a temporary spiritual experience. We're eternal spiritual beings, temporarily focused through physical form. Death isn't something that happens to us. It's something we do consciously as we graduate from one classroom of existence to another. According to Cayce's readings, every soul is on an eternal journey of growth, service, and love. Every experience, whether joyful or challenging, contributes to this spiritual evolution. Every relationship, whether harmonious or difficult, provides opportunities for soul development. Every lifetime, whether long or short, serves the greater purpose of consciousness awakening to its own divine nature. But beyond validation, these teachings offer us something invaluable, a roadmap for understanding that death is not an ending but a graduation. According to Cayce's readings, every soul is eternal, every experience has purpose, and love truly transcends all boundaries, even the boundary between life and death. These insights from the sleeping prophet of Virginia Beach remind us that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings hoping for a spiritual future. The 5 experiences he described aren't just what happens after we die. They're revelations about the nature of consciousness itself and our eternal journey of growth, service, and love. During his final years, Cayce often spoke about how understanding these afterlife experiences should transform how we live. If we know that consciousness continues, how does that change our priorities? If we understand that every action ripples through eternity, how does that affect our choices? If we recognize that we're surrounded by spiritual companions, how does that eliminate our loneliness? If we comprehend our infinite free will, how does that empower our current incarnation? If we believe we have access to universal knowledge, how does that expand our potential? As we reflect on these profound teachings, consider how understanding these truths might transform how you approach your current lifetime. Are you living as an eternal being temporarily focused through physical form? Are you recognizing the spiritual companions who surround you? Are you making choices that reflect your understanding of cosmic free will? Are you accessing the universal knowledge available through intuition and inspiration? If you found these insights meaningful, share your reflections in the comments below. I'll personally heart every thoughtful response because these conversations matter deeply. Tell me which of these 5 experiences resonates most strongly with you and how this knowledge might change your approach to living. And don't forget to subscribe for more explorations into Edgar Cayce's timeless wisdom about consciousness, healing, and our spiritual destiny. The sleeping prophet's gift to humanity wasn't just glimpses of the afterlife. It was the understanding that we are all eternal souls, forever connected, forever growing, forever loved. Death is not the opposite of life. It's the continuation of life in its truest form. And that understanding changes everything about how we choose to live, love, and serve while we're here in physical form. Remember, you are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that makes all the difference. What if everything you've been taught about life and death is backwards? What if the afterlife isn't something that comes later, but something you're experiencing right now, in this very moment? This wasn't just philosophical speculation for Edgar Cayce. Throughout decades of documented readings preserved in the archives of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, he consistently described a reality that would make most people question everything they think they know about existence. Before we go deeper, if this perspective challenges something inside you, drop a comment sharing your thoughts. I'm reading every single one and marking them with a heart because this conversation matters. And if you're ready to explore the mysteries of consciousness with me, hit that subscribe button. You're about to discover why Edgar Cayce believed we've been living in the afterlife all along. The sleeping prophet, as many called him, never claimed to understand how his abilities worked. Born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Cayce spent his early years as a simple photographer, a man of deep faith but unremarkable circumstances. Yet when he entered his self-induced trance state, something extraordinary happened. He could access information that seemed to come from beyond the limitations of physical reality. Medical diagnoses for people he'd never met, historical details from civilizations long forgotten, and perhaps most profound, insights into the very nature of consciousness that would take science decades to even begin exploring. But here's what most people miss about Cayce's work. He wasn't just giving psychic readings. He was describing a fundamental truth about existence that the archives reveal again and again. In his understanding, consciousness doesn't begin at birth and end at death. It's eternal, continuous, and exists on multiple levels simultaneously. What we call physical life is just one frequency, one dimension of a much larger reality that we're already immersed in. During the years between the wars, when Americans were grappling with unprecedented loss and uncertainty, Cayce's readings offered something radical. Not comfort through denial, but a complete reframing of what death actually means. According to the material preserved in Virginia Beach, when someone dies physically, they don't go somewhere else. They simply shift their awareness to a level of reality that was always there, always accessible, but hidden behind the veil of physical perception. Think about that for a moment. Every person you've ever loved who has passed away hasn't gone to some distant realm. In Cayce's framework, they've simply transitioned to another layer of the same existence you're in right now. The afterlife isn't a place you travel to. It's a state of consciousness you already occupy, just tuned to a different frequency. The evidence for this, according to the documented readings, shows up in ways we often dismiss. Dreams, for instance. Cayce described dreams not as random neural firing, but as genuine experiences in these other levels of reality. When you dream of a deceased loved one, you're not imagining them. You're actually connecting with their consciousness on a plane where physical death is irrelevant. The barriers between these levels become thin during sleep, allowing your awareness to operate in dimensions it normally can't access while focused on physical reality. But it goes deeper than dreams. The readings consistently pointed to something Cayce called the Akashic Records, a concept that sounds mystical, but describes something surprisingly coherent. Imagine that every thought, every experience, every moment of consciousness throughout all of existence is recorded in a kind of universal memory, not stored in a location, but embedded in the fabric of consciousness itself. When Cayce accessed information about someone's past lives or future possibilities, he was reading from this record, this living library of all existence. Now here's where it gets profound. If such a record exists, if all experiences throughout all time are somehow preserved and accessible, what does that say about the nature of reality? It suggests that nothing is ever truly lost. No experience ends, no consciousness disappears. Everything that has ever been continues to exist in what we might call the eternal now, a dimension where past, present, and future aren't separate, but different aspects of one continuous existence. The implications are staggering. During sessions documented in the early decades of the 20th century, Cayce described how our current physical life is just one chapter in an ongoing story of soul development. We've lived before, we'll live again, but more accurately, we're living on multiple levels simultaneously. The person you are right now exists not just in this physical body, but in dimensions of consciousness you can't normally perceive. This is why Cayce could sometimes describe future events, not because he was seeing into some predetermined timeline, but because he was accessing a level of reality where time operates differently. On the physical plane, we experience time as linear, moving from past to future. But the readings suggested that on other levels of existence, all moments coexist. The future isn't something that hasn't happened yet. It's something that exists in a dimension your physical senses can't detect. What happened in the next moment during those readings often shocked the people present. Cayce would sometimes describe the room not as they saw it with physical eyes, but as it appeared on other levels of reality. Energies, presences, patterns of light and consciousness that filled the space, but remained invisible to normal perception. He was literally describing the afterlife dimensions that occupied the same space as physical reality. This understanding resolves one of the great mysteries that has haunted humanity forever. Why do some people report near-death experiences where they feel more alive, more conscious, more real than they ever did in physical life? Because, according to Cayce's framework, they're not glimpsing something foreign. They're remembering their true state. Physical life is actually the limited condition. The afterlife dimensions offer expanded consciousness, greater awareness, fuller existence. The medical community of Cayce's time couldn't explain his diagnostic abilities. How could an uneducated man describe complex medical conditions in people hundreds of miles away? But if consciousness isn't limited to the physical brain, if we exist simultaneously on multiple levels of reality, then distance becomes meaningless. Cayce wasn't using some mysterious psychic power. He was simply operating from a level of consciousness where the barriers of space and physical separation don't exist. Throughout the Great Depression and into the war years, thousands of people sought readings from Cayce. The archives preserve case after case of individuals whose lives transformed not because they received supernatural intervention, but because they began understanding the true nature of their existence. They realized that their challenges, their suffering, their experiences were all part of a much larger journey of consciousness that extended far beyond one physical lifetime. But here's what makes this truly extraordinary. Cayce never asked people to simply believe him. The readings consistently emphasized personal experience, meditation, dreams, intuitive development. These weren't just spiritual practices. They were methods for directly experiencing the multi-level nature of reality. Every person has the capacity to perceive beyond physical limitations, to access the dimensions we call the afterlife, while still embodied in physical form. Modern research into consciousness has started catching up to what Cayce described decades ago. Studies on near-death experiences, research into quantum consciousness, investigations of past life memories in children, all of this points toward a reality more complex than materialist science wanted to admit. Consciousness appears to be fundamental, not emergent from matter. And if consciousness is fundamental, then Cayce's description of a multidimensional existence becomes not just possible, but probable. Consider what this means for your life right now. Every moment of joy, every connection with another soul, every insight and growth experience, none of it is temporary. All of it is being recorded, preserved, integrated into your eternal consciousness. You're not building a temporary life that ends when your body fails. You're crafting an eternal identity that continues across dimensions most people can't perceive yet. The readings from Virginia Beach often addressed people's fear of death. But once you understand what Cayce was describing, that fear loses its foundation. Death isn't an ending or even a transition to somewhere else. It's a shift in focus, like changing the channel on a radio. The other stations were always broadcasting. You just couldn't hear them while tuned to the physical frequency. This is why communication with deceased loved ones sometimes seems possible. In Cayce's framework, they haven't gone away. They're right here, existing on a level of reality that overlaps with physical space, but operates at a different frequency of consciousness. Under certain conditions, when the barriers thin or when someone develops their sensitivity, communication becomes possible because both parties are already in the same place, just perceiving reality from different levels. But perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of this understanding concerns purpose. If we're already living in the afterlife, if physical existence is just one layer of eternal consciousness, then every experience takes on cosmic significance. Nothing is random. Every challenge offers growth. Every relationship provides opportunity for soul development. We're not waiting to go to heaven or fearing a journey to judgment. We're actively creating our experience of these eternal dimensions through every choice, every thought, every action. The documented cases in the ARE archives show patterns that support this view. People who approached their challenges as opportunities for growth, who treated others with compassion, who developed their consciousness through meditation and service, these individuals consistently reported experiences that matched what we might call heavenly states. Not after death, but during life. They were already experiencing higher dimensions of the afterlife by raising their own consciousness while still physical. Conversely, those trapped in fear, anger, resentment, or destructive patterns reported experiences more aligned with what we might call hellish states. Again, not after death, but right now. Hell isn't a place you go to for punishment. It's a frequency of consciousness characterized by separation, fear, and suffering. And you can experience it while fully alive in physical form. This puts incredible power in your hands. You're not a helpless being waiting to be judged by some external authority. You're an eternal consciousness currently focused on physical reality, actively choosing which dimensions of the afterlife you experience through the frequency of your own awareness. Raise your consciousness through love, service, creativity, and growth, and you literally tune into higher dimensions of existence. Remain trapped in lower frequencies of fear and separation, and that becomes your experienced reality. Cayce saw this clearly during his readings. He could perceive the levels of consciousness people operated from, and he consistently taught that we have the power to change our frequency, to raise our awareness, to experience the more beautiful dimensions of existence that are always available. The afterlife isn't some place you earn entry to through belief or behavior. It's the full spectrum of reality, and you're already there, already choosing moment by moment which frequencies you inhabit. As we reach the end of this exploration, I want you to sit with a question. If you're already living in the afterlife, already existing in eternal dimensions of consciousness, what does that mean for how you live today? How does it change your relationships, your choices, your fears, your dreams? This is exactly the kind of profound realization that Edgar Cayce offered to thousands of people. Not through supernatural intervention, but through revealing what was always true. We are consciousness, having a physical experience within a much larger reality. Death is not an end, but a shift in perception. And the afterlife dimensions we imagine as somewhere else are right here, right now, waiting for us to raise our awareness enough to perceive them. If this transformed how you see reality, I need to hear from you. Comment below with your biggest insight from this revelation. I'm marking every comment with a heart because your perspective matters. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to continue this journey into the mysteries of consciousness. Edgar Cayce left us a roadmap to understanding our true nature. It's time we started following it. The sleeping prophet knew something that most of us forget. We're not physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences. We're spiritual beings, eternal consciousness, temporarily focused on physical reality as one chapter in an infinite story. The afterlife isn't ahead of you. It surrounds you, it includes you, you're already home. But let's go even deeper into what this means practically. Throughout the readings preserved over decades, Cayce repeatedly emphasized that recognizing our multidimensional nature isn't just philosophical insight. It's meant to change how we navigate daily existence. When you understand that you're already operating in afterlife dimensions, suddenly every interaction carries weight beyond the physical moment. Consider how Cayce described the power of thought. In his framework, thoughts aren't just ephemeral electrical patterns in your brain. They're creative forces that shape your experience across all dimensions of consciousness. Every thought you think is literally building the reality you experience, not just physically, but in these other levels of existence. Negative, fearful, hateful thoughts create dense, heavy frequencies that trap consciousness in lower dimensions. Loving, creative, compassionate thoughts elevate awareness into higher realms of the afterlife spectrum. This is why the readings so often emphasize the importance of ideals, not moral rules imposed from outside, but consciously chosen frequencies that align your consciousness with specific dimensions of reality. When you hold love as your ideal and genuinely work to embody it, you're not just being a good person, you're literally tuning your consciousness to dimensions of existence characterized by unity, connection, and expanded awareness. You're choosing which part of the afterlife you inhabit right now. The archives contain countless examples of people who transformed their life experience, not by changing external circumstances, but by shifting their consciousness. Someone dealing with chronic illness would receive guidance to change not just physical treatments, but mental and spiritual patterns. Because in Cayce's understanding, illness often reflects disharmony across multiple levels of existence. Healing the physical requires addressing the consciousness that exists in dimensions beyond the body. This multi-level nature of healing explains something that baffled medical practitioners of his era. Why would Cayce recommend seemingly unrelated treatments? A physical remedy combined with meditation, prayer, and specific mental attitudes. Because he perceived that true healing happens when all levels of consciousness align. The physical body, the mental patterns, the emotional frequencies, and the spiritual dimensions all needed to harmonize for complete restoration. What's fascinating is how this understanding applies to relationships. In the readings, Cayce often described how souls encounter each other across multiple lifetimes. That person you feel inexplicably drawn to or instantly repelled by. According to his framework, you're not just meeting them for the first time. You're recognizing a consciousness you've interacted with in other physical lives, in between life states, and on dimensions of existence your conscious mind can't access. The afterlife dimensions include all these soul connections, all these ongoing relationships that transcend any single physical incarnation. This means your relationships aren't temporary connections that end when bodies die. They're eternal dynamics playing out across multiple levels of reality. The love you feel for someone doesn't disappear at death, because that love exists on dimensions where physical separation is impossible. This is why grief feels so complex. Part of you knows, at a deep level, that the separation is only partial, only on the physical plane. Other parts of your consciousness remain connected across dimensions you can't consciously perceive. During the challenging years of the mid-20th century, Cayce's readings offered this perspective to families torn apart by war and loss. The comfort wasn't false hope or denial. It was recognition of a deeper truth. Your loved one hasn't ceased to exist. They've shifted focus to other dimensions of the same reality you occupy. And because you're already living in those dimensions too, just focused primarily on physical experience, the connection remains unbroken at levels beyond normal awareness. This is where practices like meditation become crucial. Cayce consistently taught meditation not as a religious ritual, but as a practical method for expanding awareness beyond physical limitations. When you quiet the physical mind and turn attention inward, you're not going somewhere else. You're becoming conscious of dimensions you already occupy, but normally can't perceive. You're experiencing the afterlife directly, while still in physical form. The readings described specific experiences people could have during deep meditation. Encounters with higher consciousness, communication with souls no longer physical, access to wisdom and guidance from dimensions beyond material reality. These weren't supernatural phenomena. They were natural results of consciousness, recognizing its true multidimensional nature. You're always connected to these realms. Meditation simply allows you to become aware of what's already present. This understanding also transforms how we view intuition and synchronicity, those moments when you inexplicably know something you shouldn't be able to know, when circumstances align in impossibly perfect ways, when you feel guided by forces beyond chance. In Cayce's framework, these aren't miracles or coincidences. They're evidence of your consciousness operating across multiple levels of reality. Information and influence flowing from dimensions where time and space work differently, entering your awareness through channels that momentarily open. Every person has experienced these moments, a thought of someone right before they call, a dream that provides crucial information, a gut feeling that saves you from disaster. We dismiss these as coincidence because we're trained to believe consciousness is limited to the physical brain. But if Cayce was right, if we're already existing in afterlife dimensions, then these experiences are normal. They're your consciousness, briefly recognizing information available on levels beyond physical perception. The implications for free will and destiny become clearer through this lens. The readings suggested that before entering physical life, consciousness exists in dimensions where it can perceive potential futures, karmic patterns, and growth opportunities. From that expanded state, you help design the circumstances and challenges of your upcoming physical life, not as punishment or random assignment, but as carefully chosen opportunities for soul development. So when you face difficulties in physical life, they're not evidence of a cruel universe or divine punishment. They're challenges you selected from a higher dimensional perspective, because they offer exactly what your eternal consciousness needs for growth. The afterlife dimensions you're already part of include this pre-life planning state and the wisdom that guides these choices. This doesn't mean everything is predetermined. Within the framework of chosen challenges and opportunities, you retain complete freedom of response. How you react to circumstances, what attitudes you adopt, which frequencies of consciousness you embody, these remain your choice moment by moment. You're simultaneously living out patterns chosen from higher dimensions, while exercising free will in how you navigate them. Both are true because consciousness operates on multiple levels at once. Understanding this transforms suffering from meaningless pain into purposeful experience. Not that suffering is good or should be accepted passively, but that it carries potential for growth that you yourself recognized from an expanded state of consciousness. The goal isn't to suffer, but to grow through whatever arises, knowing that your eternal self chose these exact circumstances for reasons your limited physical awareness may not fully grasp yet. As we truly integrate this perspective, fear loses its grip. Fear of death dissolves when you recognize it's just a shift in focus. Fear of loss softens when you understand nothing real can be lost across eternal dimensions. Fear of meaninglessness disappears when every experience contributes to infinite consciousness development. Fear of judgment transforms when you recognize you're creating your experience of these dimensions through your own consciousness choices. The sleeping prophet's greatest gift wasn't prediction or healing, remarkable as those were. His greatest gift was this revelation of what we truly are. Eternal consciousness temporarily focused on physical experience, already living in the fullness of existence we call the afterlife, already home in dimensions that include but transcend material reality. Every moment becomes sacred. Every choice becomes significant. Every relationship becomes eternal. Because it's all happening now. Across levels of reality, most people have forgotten how to perceive. Edgar Cayce revealed that souls who die without spiritual development become what he termed earthbound entities, unable to progress to higher spiritual realms. In his documented readings, Cayce consistently described these souls as remaining in lower vibrational frequencies, often unaware they had even died, desperately clinging to material consciousness patterns they developed during physical life. But here's what shocked even Cayce himself about these readings. He discovered that spiritual growth isn't optional for the afterlife transition, it's absolutely essential. Without it, consciousness remains trapped in what he called the borderland between physical and spiritual existence. Today, I'm sharing the most profound documented revelations Edgar Cayce ever received about unprepared souls in the afterlife. These aren't theories. These are verified cases from over 14,000 psychic readings archived at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. If you're ready to understand what happens when consciousness faces death without spiritual preparation, subscribe and hit that notification bell because this information could completely transform your approach to spiritual development. Cayce's readings consistently revealed a shocking truth about consciousness after death. The soul's spiritual development during physical life directly determines its ability to navigate the afterlife realms. In reading after reading, Cayce encountered consciousness that had crossed over, but remained stuck because they had never developed beyond material concerns. The sleeping prophet described these souls as existing in what he called a gray area of consciousness. They weren't in hell as traditionally conceived, but they weren't able to access the higher spiritual dimensions either. They remained suspended in frequencies that matched their earthly mental and emotional patterns. In his documented readings about the afterlife, Cayce revealed that these earthbound souls experience a state he described as confusion and seeking. They retain their personality and memories, but without spiritual development, they lack the understanding needed to progress forward in their soul evolution. But wait, this gets even more significant. Cayce's readings showed that time works differently in these lower spiritual frequencies. What might feel like years of confusion to an earthbound soul could represent much longer periods in Earth time. The lack of spiritual growth creates what Cayce called soul stagnation that can persist until the consciousness finally learns the spiritual lessons it missed during physical incarnation. Here's what makes Cayce's revelations about unprepared souls so crucial for understanding consciousness itself. His readings consistently indicated that spiritual development isn't something that happens automatically after death. The patterns of thought, the level of compassion, the understanding of universal principles that we develop during physical life become the foundation for our afterlife experience. Cayce's documented cases revealed that souls without spiritual growth often become fixated on unfinished earthly business. His readings described consciousness remaining attached to material possessions, relationships, or experiences they couldn't let go of during physical life. This attachment keeps them vibrating at frequencies too low to access higher spiritual realms. In 3 minutes, I'll reveal what Cayce said about the specific spiritual qualities that determine a soul's ability to progress after death. But first, you need to understand the mechanics of consciousness that he discovered. The Sleeping Prophet's readings revealed that spiritual growth during physical life serves as preparation for navigating multiple dimensions of consciousness. Souls who develop qualities like compassion, forgiveness, service to others, and understanding of spiritual principles naturally attune to higher frequencies after death. But souls who remain focused purely on material gain, personal pleasure, or selfish desires create what Cayce called crystallized thought patterns that become like spiritual anchors, preventing their consciousness from ascending to higher realms. Cayce's readings about earthbound souls revealed something that changes everything about how we understand spiritual development. He discovered that these trapped souls often remain near the earth plane, sometimes attempting to influence physical world events or seeking to communicate with incarnate souls. This is where his revelations become truly profound. According to Cayce's documented readings, earthbound souls can sometimes attach themselves to living people who have similar vibrational patterns. People who are purely materialistic, filled with anger, or spiritually undeveloped can unknowingly attract influence from souls who died in similar states of consciousness. But here's the liberating truth Cayce revealed about this seemingly dire situation. Spiritual growth is always possible, even for earthbound souls. His readings consistently showed that through the prayers and spiritual efforts of incarnate souls, earthbound entities can be helped to understand their situation and guided toward higher realms. Cayce's readings revealed that souls in these lower frequencies can still learn and grow. They aren't permanently trapped. When they finally develop the spiritual understanding they lacked during physical life, they naturally begin to vibrate at higher frequencies and can progress to more advanced spiritual dimensions. The Sleeping Prophet's most important revelation about souls who die without spiritual growth relates to what he called the law of spiritual attraction. Like attracts like in the spiritual realms, just as it does in physical life. Souls gravitate toward dimensions and experiences that match their level of spiritual development. This means that spiritual growth during physical life isn't just about improving our earthly experience. It's about preparing our consciousness for navigating the vast spiritual universe that awaits after death. Cayce's readings consistently emphasized that spiritual development involves specific qualities that we can cultivate right now: compassion for others, forgiveness of wrongs, service beyond self-interest, meditation and prayer, studying spiritual principles, and applying universal laws of love in daily life. But wait, there's something even more important about timing. Cayce's readings revealed that the moment of death itself presents a crucial opportunity for spiritual progression. Souls who have developed spiritually during life experience what he described as a natural transition, moving smoothly from physical consciousness into higher spiritual realms, guided by more advanced souls who assist in the process. However, souls without spiritual development often experience confusion during this transition. Cayce's readings describe them as not recognizing the spiritual guides who come to assist them, or being unable to perceive the light and love being offered because their consciousness remains focused on material concerns. Here's what makes this revelation so urgent for your spiritual journey today. Every moment we spend developing spiritually during this physical incarnation is preparation for our eventual transition to spiritual dimensions. The compassion we develop now, the forgiveness we practice today, the service we offer to others right now, all of this becomes the foundation for our consciousness after death. Cayce's readings about unprepared souls weren't meant to frighten people into spiritual development. They were meant to illuminate the incredible opportunity we have during physical life to grow spiritually and prepare for the magnificent spiritual adventure that awaits evolved consciousness. The sleeping prophet consistently taught that spiritual growth is the soul's primary purpose during Earth incarnations. Every challenge we face, every relationship we navigate, every choice between selfishness and service provides opportunities to develop the spiritual qualities that will determine our afterlife experience. But here's the most empowering truth from Cayce's revelations about soul development. Spiritual growth doesn't require complex practices or years of study. Cayce's readings emphasize that simple daily choices guided by love, compassion, and service to others create profound spiritual development. Treating others with kindness, forgiving those who wrong us, helping people in need, practicing gratitude, and connecting with the divine through prayer or meditation. These seemingly simple practices create enormous spiritual growth because they align our consciousness with universal spiritual principles that govern all existence. Cayce's documented readings revealed that souls who die with this spiritual foundation experience what he called joyous transition into realms of incredible beauty and opportunity for continued growth. Instead of confusion and earthbound attachment, spiritually developed souls experience welcome from advanced beings, understanding of their spiritual journey, and excitement about continued evolution in higher dimensions. The contrast couldn't be more dramatic between prepared and unprepared souls at the moment of death. Here's what Cayce revealed about the specific spiritual preparation that ensures smooth transition after death. Regular meditation or prayer that connects us with divine consciousness, daily acts of service and compassion toward others, forgiveness practice that releases resentment and anger, gratitude, cultivation that recognizes spiritual blessings, study of spiritual principles and universal laws, and conscious effort to see divine spark in all people. According to Cayce's readings, souls who develop these qualities naturally vibrate at frequencies that allow access to higher spiritual realms after death. They become what he called spiritually prepared consciousness, ready for advanced soul development beyond physical incarnation. But there's something even more profound about Cayce's revelations regarding unprepared souls. His readings consistently showed that earthbound souls eventually do progress spiritually, but they must learn in more difficult circumstances what they could have learned more easily during physical life. The spiritual principles remain the same, but learning them while trapped in lower frequencies requires much more effort and time than developing spiritually while incarnate in physical form. This is why Cayce emphasized the incredible opportunity we have right now during physical life for spiritual development. Every day we're alive presents countless opportunities to choose love over fear, service over selfishness, forgiveness over resentment, gratitude over complaint, and spiritual growth over material obsession. These choices determine not just our earthly experience, but our consciousness level at the moment of death. Cayce's readings about souls who die without spiritual growth ultimately reveal the magnificent purpose of physical incarnation itself. We're here to develop spiritually, to learn universal principles of love and service, and to prepare our consciousness for the incredible spiritual adventure that awaits evolved souls. The sleeping prophet's most empowering message about spiritual preparation is that it's never too late to begin. Whether you're just starting your spiritual journey, or you've been developing for years, every moment of spiritual growth contributes to your consciousness evolution and afterlife preparation. Right now, as you're listening to this, you have the opportunity to make choices that will determine your spiritual development and your experience after death. You can choose compassion over judgment, forgiveness over resentment, service over selfishness, and love over fear. According to Edgar Cayce's documented readings, these choices create the spiritual foundation that ensures smooth transition to higher realms and continued soul evolution beyond physical incarnation. If this information has opened your understanding about the importance of spiritual development, make sure to subscribe and share this video with others who are ready for this profound truth. The Sleeping Prophet's revelations about consciousness after death provide guidance that could transform not just your spiritual journey, but your entire approach to living with purpose and preparing for the magnificent spiritual adventure that awaits evolved souls. Your spiritual development today determines your consciousness experience tomorrow, both in physical life and in the spiritual realms beyond death. But here's what makes Cayce's revelations about unprepared souls even more urgent for anyone watching this right now. His readings revealed that we're currently living in what he called a time of spiritual awakening on Earth, where more souls than ever before have the opportunity for rapid spiritual development during physical incarnation. Cayce's documented readings from the 1930s and 1940s predicted that humanity would enter a period where spiritual knowledge would become widely available, creating unprecedented opportunities for soul growth. He foresaw that ancient spiritual wisdom would be rediscovered and that individuals would have access to spiritual teachings that were once hidden from the masses. This is exactly what we're experiencing today with the explosion of spiritual content, meditation practices, and consciousness studies available to anyone seeking spiritual development. But wait, there's a profound responsibility that comes with this spiritual opportunity. According to Cayce's readings, souls who incarnate during periods of widespread spiritual awakening are held to higher standards of spiritual development. The Sleeping Prophet revealed that when spiritual knowledge is readily available, souls are expected to use that knowledge for growth and service to others. This means that living during our current time of spiritual awakening comes with both incredible opportunity and significant responsibility for consciousness development. Cayce's readings about the earth changes and spiritual transformation consistently emphasized that individual spiritual growth contributes to collective human evolution. Every person who chooses spiritual development over material obsession helps raise the vibrational frequency of human consciousness as a whole. Here's something that will shock you about Cayce's predictions regarding spiritual evolution. His readings revealed that souls who refuse spiritual development during times of widespread spiritual awakening face more challenging afterlife experiences than souls who lived in periods when spiritual knowledge was limited. The Sleeping Prophet explained that greater spiritual opportunity creates greater spiritual responsibility. This puts tremendous significance on the spiritual choices we make every single day right now. Cayce's documented readings revealed specific signs that indicate a soul is successfully developing spiritually during physical incarnation. These include increasing compassion for all living beings, natural desire to serve others without expectation of reward, ability to forgive quickly and completely, growing sense of connection to divine consciousness, and spontaneous experiences of love and gratitude. But here's what's truly remarkable about these spiritual development indicators. Cayce's readings showed that souls who develop these qualities naturally begin to have experiences that prepare them for afterlife transition. They may have prophetic dreams, sense the presence of spiritual guides, experience moments of expanded consciousness, or feel deep connection to universal spiritual principles. These experiences serve as confirmation that spiritual development is progressing and consciousness is preparing for smooth transition to higher realms after death. The Sleeping Prophet's readings also revealed that spiritually developing souls often become channels for healing and guidance to help others. As consciousness evolves, it naturally seeks to serve the spiritual development of other souls, creating what Cayce called spiritual chain reactions of awakening. This is why sharing spiritual knowledge and supporting others in their consciousness evolution becomes a natural impulse for spiritually developing souls. But there's something even more profound about Cayce's revelations regarding collective spiritual evolution. His readings consistently showed that earthbound souls who remain trapped after death are eventually helped by more evolved souls who volunteer to assist in their spiritual development. This creates an eternal network of spiritual service where advanced consciousness helps less developed consciousness progress toward higher realms. According to Cayce's documented readings, this spiritual assistance system operates throughout all levels of consciousness, from earthbound souls receiving help from evolved spirits to incarnate souls receiving guidance from spiritual teachers in higher dimensions. Here's what this means for your spiritual development right now. Every effort you make toward spiritual growth not only prepares your consciousness for smooth afterlife transition, but also develops your ability to serve other souls in their evolution. Spiritual development creates both personal benefits and universal service opportunities that extend far beyond individual incarnation. Cayce's readings revealed that the most evolved souls often choose to return to physical incarnation, specifically to help guide humanity through periods of spiritual awakening. These souls sacrifice the bliss of higher spiritual realms to serve collective human evolution. This explains why so many people today feel called to spiritual teaching, healing work, or consciousness expansion activities. According to Cayce's readings, these impulses often indicate advanced souls who have incarnated to assist in humanity's current spiritual transformation. The Sleeping Prophet's final revelations about souls who die without spiritual growth ultimately point to the magnificent design of spiritual evolution itself. No soul is ever permanently lost or abandoned. The universe provides infinite opportunities for consciousness development, both during physical incarnation and in spiritual realms after death. However, the ease and speed of spiritual development varies dramatically based on the choices we make during physical life. Developing spiritually while incarnate in physical form provides advantages and opportunities that aren't available in the afterlife dimensions where unprepared souls become trapped. The revelation that will change how you see death. Most people think death is the end. They imagine a moment of silence, a final heartbeat, and then nothing. But Edgar Cayce, the man known as the Sleeping Prophet, revealed something radically different. In his documented trance readings, he described death not as a punishment or a mystery, but as a sacred transition, a return to a place our souls have always known. He said the soul senses when its earthly purpose is complete, when the lessons of this lifetime have reached their end, and when it's time to return home. According to Cayce, the soul begins to detach before the final breath, preparing itself for the light that welcomes it back. This isn't a theory. It's a revelation recorded thousands of times in his lifetime of spiritual readings. If you've ever felt that strange peace around someone near death, that quiet knowing in their eyes, what if that was the soul recognizing the call to go home? Before we continue, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe the soul can sense the moment it's time to return? Type your answer in the comments below, and let's begin this journey into what Cayce called the most beautiful awakening a soul can experience. When Edgar Cayce spoke about death, he never described it as an ending. He said it was a continuation, a moment when the soul gently loosens its grip on the physical body and prepares to return to the realm it came from. In hundreds of his readings, Cayce explained that the soul is fully aware of this process, even if the conscious mind is not. It's not a surprise to the higher self, it's a recognition, a knowing that the lessons of this lifetime have reached their natural completion. Cayce described this as a divine rhythm, an agreement between the soul and God made long before birth. Every challenge, every joy, every relationship, and every pain was chosen to help the soul grow. And when that growth is complete, the soul begins to sense that it's time to go home. There is no fear in that moment, only peace. He said that those who live close to God, who pray and serve with love, often experience death as an awakening, not a loss. In one of his readings, Cayce described how the soul withdraws as gently as breath leaving the body. He compared it to walking through a door into sunlight after years in a dimly lit room. He said the soul feels lightness, freedom, and familiarity, as if returning from a long journey. But he also warned that how we live shapes how we die. The soul that clings to hate, greed, or resentment feels confusion when it leaves the body, unable to recognize the higher vibration of the heavenly planes. Meanwhile, the soul that has cultivated love, forgiveness, and faith transitions easily, surrounded by guides and loved ones who welcome it back. Death, in Cayce's words, is not to be feared. It's the proof that life continues, and that God never abandons what He created. He often said, "There is no death, only a change of consciousness." That truth became the foundation of his teachings. He saw death not as a moment of separation, but of reunion. Cayce described a luminous thread, the silver cord, that connects the physical body to the spiritual form. As long as this cord remains intact, life continues. When it is released, the soul is free. He explained that this separation can sometimes be seen or felt through visions, dreams, or an overwhelming sense of peace near a dying person. To Cayce, these were sacred signs, reminders that God's hand is in every transition, and if we truly understood that, we would never fear death again. Right now, if you've lost someone you love, or if you've wondered what happens when this life ends, remember what Cayce revealed. Your soul has already been there. It knows the way home. The peace you long for is the peace you will one day return to. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Do you believe the soul can sense when its mission is complete? Let's keep exploring this truth together. Cayce explained that when a person begins to feel an unexplained calm in the face of illness or aging, it is often the soul preparing itself for the transition. He described that peace not as resignation, but as recognition. The soul starts to align its vibration with the higher realms, withdrawing from the noise of the material world. Many times, this happens in silence, through moments of reflection, dreams of radiant light, or encounters with departed loved ones who appear in visions. Cayce emphasized that these experiences are not imagination. They are the natural language of the spirit world. The veil between worlds thins when the soul begins its return, and that gentle awareness is what some call the call home. He also taught that each soul carries within it a divine compass, an inner guidance that never fails to point toward God. During life, this compass guides our moral choices, our compassion, and our intuition. But as death approaches, it grows even stronger, drawing the soul toward its source. In his readings, Cayce compared it to a magnet pulling iron filings. The closer the soul comes to its true home, the stronger the pull becomes. He urged people not to fear this pull, but to embrace it as proof that we are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. This understanding, he said, changes everything. It makes life more sacred and death less final. Cayce's view of death was deeply connected to his understanding of Jesus Christ. He taught that Christ is the bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds, the consciousness that guides every soul home. In several readings, he said that no soul is ever alone at the moment of death. Whether one believes or not, the light of Christ surrounds every spirit that departs the body. He called this light the remembrance of divine love. For those who have lived with faith, the passage feels like awakening in that light. For those who have lived in denial of it, the light still comes, but it can be overwhelming until they remember who they truly are. Cayce believed that even the darkest soul is eventually lifted into that light through God's patience and mercy. So what does this mean for the living? Cayce said the way to prepare for death is to live fully awake, to align daily thoughts and actions with the Spirit of Christ within. Each act of kindness, each moment of forgiveness, each prayer of gratitude shapes the vibration of the soul. When the time comes to leave, these vibrations form the path the soul will walk home. In this sense, the afterlife is not a place. It is a state of consciousness that we build every day with our choices. Death does not change who we are. It reveals who we have become. In one of his most moving readings, Cayce said that when the soul departs, it is greeted by familiar presences, spirits of loved ones, teachers, and guides who assist in the transition. They do not appear as ghosts or shadows, but as radiant beings of light recognizable by their energy and love. He described this reunion as one of the most beautiful moments in all creation. The soul, often surprised by the joy it feels, understands instantly that nothing was ever lost. Every connection made in love remains eternal. Cayce emphasized that this reunion isn't dependent on religion or ritual, but on the soul's vibration. Those who have lived with compassion attract compassion. Those who have lived with bitterness must first pass through realms of confusion until they awaken to the light of understanding. But no one is ever abandoned. God's law of mercy ensures that all eventually find the way home. He explained that heaven isn't a distant realm above the clouds. It's a dimension of consciousness, interwoven with our own. We move through it not by distance, but by vibration. The soul, shedding its earthly limitations, naturally gravitates to the level of light it has attuned itself to through love, service, and faith. That is why Cayce constantly urged people to seek God daily, to make spiritual living a habit rather than a hope. You don't prepare for heaven in death, he said. You prepare for it in life. The more one lives in harmony with divine law, love your neighbor, forgive, serve, the smoother and more luminous the transition becomes. Death is not a sudden shift, but the next breath of an eternal rhythm already begun. He also revealed that souls often visit their loved ones after passing, not to frighten but to comfort. He described these visits as moments when the living are most open, during dreams, prayer, or deep grief. The departed may impress gentle thoughts, warm sensations, or symbolic images to say, "I am still here." Cayce cautioned never to seek these experiences through rituals or seances because forcing contact can confuse both realms. Instead, he said, pray for peace and give thanks. True communication with the spirit world happens through love, not demand. The more the living release their attachment with gratitude, the easier it is for both sides to grow. In this exchange, God's mercy bridges the visible and invisible worlds. Before we go deeper, pause for a moment. If this message has touched your heart, like this video, subscribe and share it so more souls can understand that death is not an ending. It's a return, a homecoming guided by the same divine love that gave us life. Let's continue exploring what Cayce revealed about this sacred passage and how it can transform the way we live today. Cayce's readings often connected death with divine timing rather than random tragedy. He explained that while the physical mind sees death as loss or interruption, the soul sees it as fulfillment. Every lifetime, he said, has a design, a blueprint set before birth that outlines the lessons and opportunities the soul wishes to experience. These lessons can be short or long, gentle or difficult, but they always lead toward growth. When the essential purpose of a lifetime is completed, the soul begins to withdraw its energy from the physical plane. That is why some people, even when gravely ill, seem to know when their time is near. They speak calmly, release attachments, and express gratitude. Cayce said that this awareness isn't fear or surrender, it's recognition. The soul remembers its eternal nature and begins to align with the vibration of its true home. He described how in those final moments, the veil between worlds grows thin. Many report seeing loved ones or radiant figures standing near their bed, and Cayce affirmed these visions as real. He said the dying often experience a sensation of floating, a deep peace, and the presence of light. That light, he explained, is the Christ consciousness, the universal awareness of divine love that guides every soul through the transition. In that light, the soul reviews its life not as judgment, but as understanding. It feels what it made others feel, and through that experience, learns compassion. Cayce said this life review is one of the most powerful gifts of the afterlife. It's not punishment, it's education, the soul's way of growing closer to God. He taught that hell is not a place of eternal fire, but a temporary state of confusion created by separation from divine love. When the soul clings to guilt, anger, or selfish desire, it cannot perceive the light that surrounds it. Yet even there, the Christ Spirit waits patiently, guiding the lost soul back toward understanding. He often reminded his followers that every soul will eventually return to the light, because no part of God can be lost forever. Death, therefore, is not the final test, but the beginning of remembrance. It's the moment the soul awakens to its origin and destiny, to be one with its Creator again. If we understood this truth deeply, Cayce said, we would live differently. We would forgive faster, love more freely, and stop fearing what cannot be avoided. Every day would become an opportunity to prepare the soul, to lighten its vibration through kindness and prayer. He said meditation is one of the most powerful ways to remember the soul's connection to God, because it mirrors the process of dying, the quiet withdrawal from the body, the silence of the mind, and the awakening of the spirit. Through meditation, he explained, we learn to die daily, to let go of the illusions of separation and awaken to eternal life even while still in the flesh. He often compared the soul's return home to the rhythm of nature. Just as seasons change without struggle, the soul's transition is part of a divine cycle. He said the same intelligence that guides the sunrise and the tides also governs the coming and going of life. The body belongs to the earth, but the soul belongs to eternity. When its work in this world is done, the soul feels that subtle calling, a pull that comes not from fear but from divine familiarity. In one of his readings, Cayce said, "The soul grows homesick for heaven." That longing explains why some people near death radiate a strange serenity, as if already hearing a music that others cannot. It's not imagination, it's memory, the memory of where we truly come from. He also explained that when the soul crosses the threshold, it doesn't lose individuality. Instead, it becomes more aware of its connection to the whole. Soul, he said, carries within it a spark of the Christ spirit, an eternal link to God. That spark never dies. It passes through lifetimes, experiences, and worlds, always learning more about love. The closer one lives to that divine spark, the easier the passage becomes. In this sense, dying isn't about leaving something behind, it's about returning to who you really are. These readings portray death as an awakening so gentle that for many souls, it feels like falling asleep and waking up in a familiar room filled with light. But Cayce also warned that modern humanity has forgotten this sacred understanding. He said our fear of death stems from materialism, the false belief that the body is all we are. We build our identities on possessions, careers, and appearances, forgetting the eternal consciousness behind them. When the soul identifies only with the physical, death feels like annihilation. But when we remember that the spirit animates the body, not the other way around, death loses its power. Cayce's message was simple, yet profound. Remember your divinity, and you will never fear death again. So as you listen now, let this reminder settle in your heart. Life is not measured by its length, but by the love you express within it. Every act of forgiveness, every silent prayer, every gesture of kindness echoes in eternity. That's what Cayce meant when he said the soul senses when its mission is complete. It recognizes that it has given all the love it came to give. And when that purpose is fulfilled, returning home is not loss, it's liberation. If this truth resonates with you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share it. Your support helps spread Cayce's message of faith and eternal hope to those who need it most. When Cayce spoke about death as a return, he was reminding humanity of something Jesus himself demonstrated through his resurrection, that life cannot be destroyed. The body may perish, but the essence of God within us endures beyond time and matter. Cayce said that Christ came not only to conquer death, but to show us the pattern our souls follow. Through love, service, and faith, we become aware of the same eternal life that lived in him. In that awareness, the fear of death dissolves. The soul begins to feel what Cayce called the vibration of eternity, a deep peace that can only come from knowing we are never truly separated from God. To Cayce, death was the fulfillment of Christ's promise. In my Father's house are many mansions. Each soul finds its own mansion, its rightful place in the vastness of creation. He wanted people to stop mourning as if their loved ones were gone forever. Instead, he urged them to celebrate that these souls had completed their lessons and moved into greater light. Grief is natural, he said, but despair is not. Those we love are not lost. They are transformed. They walk beside us in ways our eyes cannot see. And one day, when our own time comes, that reunion will feel like no time has passed at all. Cayce's readings remind us that death is not something to resist. It is part of a divine order that no soul can escape or regret once understood. The fear of it disappears when we begin to live as souls rather than bodies. So maybe that is the revelation that truly changes how we see death, the understanding that the end of the body is not the end of life, but the completion of a sacred journey. It's the moment the soul remembers that it was never separate from God, never abandoned, never lost. It is the homecoming of everything we are and everything we love. If you take one thing from Cayce's teachings, let it be this. Live each day as if you're preparing to go home, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Let your thoughts, your words, and your deeds reflect the light you will one day return to. That way, when your soul senses that sacred moment, it will not fear, it will rejoice. If this message moved you, like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the soul knows when it's time to return home? Your reflection might bring peace to someone who needs it today. Remember, as Cayce said, there is no death, only life everlasting in the presence of God.